What's up, my weather friends? On this Thanksgiving week where it's kind of nasty up north. My name is Shauna Davies, your host of What the Weather, along with James Skivers, my co-host, and today's guest. Yes, say hi. You've been out of town.
I have. Yeah, I've been out on the road. Doing.
Well, it's a good time to get back.
Yeah, doing lighting parade up in Baraboo. It was a good time.
Yeah. And today we got our host, Mr. Johnny Rowlands of KMBC 9's helicopter pilot.
Here I am.
And also we got the Met, John Davies, to help out and say,
yeah, I'll hang out over here in the corner and pop in once in a while.
I make him sit in the corner and then he comes out every
and I'm
once
going,
in a while.
I'm not worthy.
Yeah, he makes me say that too.
Yeah. That's marriage, isn't it?
So, Johnny, how you doing, man?
I'm great. Thanks so much for having me. Really excited to be here.
You.
And I think you guys got a great thing going here. And
I really appreciate that.
Really
You're
neat to be a part of it.
Known you for a long time.
Yeah.
And you were born and raised here.
Yep, born and raised here. Johnson County boy, went through the Shawnee Mission School District and went to Baker University close to home and first radio job in Topeka, and then came to Kansas City in 75, and I've been here ever since. You can't get rid of me.
Nope.
No,
well, you're too good. We love you too much. There's no way anyone in
that.
Kansas City would let you go and stuff.
I appreciate that.
But I know that you are, at this time, a big-time helicopter pilot where you do traffic, you do high-speed chases, and weather.
Yeah.
You are quite the storm chaser.
Yeah, I mean, and that's, I tell people all the time, I love TV. I mean, it's really neat to work in TV, and and I work with some fantastic people, but I'm not a TV guy. I'm a pilot, and I came out of the womb loving aviation and weather, and there's so many turns that my career has taken, and here I am. Part of my job now is chasing tornadoes in a helicopter. So for a kid who came out of the womb like that, I couldn't be in a better place.
That's a win-win.
Yeah, and it's cool doing the news part of it, the breaking news part of it. Kind of feel like you have your finger on the pulse of everything going on. The traffic part of it's cool too. The storm chasing part of it is really neat, and it all is kind of under the banner of I have this great opportunity to help people, and quick story. I taught my son when he was, 10, 11 years old. I made him and his best friend go to the Oak Park Mall and Christmas time and open the door for people who were going in and out. Aww. And they were so mad at me. It's like, Dad, about 15, 20 minutes into it. Thank you, young man. And they got
high
this
five.
kind of,
I made my son do the same thing.
There you go.
Yep.
And by the time it was time to leave, they didn't want to go. And driving home, I said, don't ever forget how good it feels to help people.
Absolutely.
Right.
And so, and I think that the underlying for everything that you guys have done too, as far as the storm chasing and all that, the underlying part of it in everything that I do with the helicopter is that I have an opportunity to help people and give them really relevant information they can use. So that's the cool part.
And that's what gets people to really pay attention, I've noticed the most, is when you can actually see it. Mm-hmm. And that's why your job is so important. And you're so good at it.
The storm chasing part of it, I think I'm validation for those who are standing out in their backyard taking pictures with their phones.
Well, I think there's actually been some research done is that if people watching TV can actually see the tornado doing damage, they're a lot more prone to take action and take cover. I know that on May 28th, just to interject real quick, Shauna and I had been out of town. We just got back in town at mid-afternoon, and we had to get on top of things
pretty
quick.
Up
and we watched a couple TV stations, including Channel 9, and we saw your helicopter coverage, and we watched just about all of that. And as we could see the damage really occurring, that's what got us to go to the basement here. So that's a very important thing.
Yeah, we were watching you.
Yeah, and I kind of feel blessed to be able to be in a situation to do that, because also the first really major tornado that I covered was the one on May 4th, 2003, I think it was.
I want to get to that in a minute.
Yeah, and that one was a long track, 35-mile tornado?
Yes.
And tragically there was one fatality on that day, and then there was one a little bit later, somebody who succumbed to some injuries. But and we got that as a first touchdown over by the Speedway,
Right.
and people knew right away that there was a tornado. There was actually a tornado there.
Yeah, see, I wanted to just go straight into the major tornadoes, and I want to start with May 28th.
Yeah.
What did you think that morning before you got it? Did you think it was going to be that bad?
I really defer to the meteorologists at the station, and I'm there regardless. So if it's a bust, everybody's really happy about that, and we're out there flying around, and there's nothing to see. That's a good day.
Right.
But really, that entire deal, and John and I have talked a little bit about this via email. That entire scenario was totally foreign to anything that I had covered storm-wise before.
Why?
Because of the structure. And I had been in one similar situation. I don't even know what the date was, but it was a storm that ended up crossing I-70 over by the toll booth. I don't know how many years ago, where I was in some rain and lightning pretty close to that. And I think it was probably an HP as well, now that I look back. But I'm used to the classic supercell.
Visuals.
Right, the visuals. And the interesting thing about flying around a tornado or a supercell is that it really is, and this sounds incredibly corny, it's really a spiritual experience, because
it is. I agree. We both think that.
But
it is.
I'll third that there, because
Yes.
I get the same feeling sometimes.
Yeah, this is something man has no control over.
exactly that part of it. But I'm sharing the tornado's domain because I'm in the air.
Right.
I don't know if that makes any sense. I'm
It
off the
makes
ground. I'm in the air.
perfect sense.
I'm eye to eye with it. I'm not looking up.
Well, and you're actually submerged in you and I went up for a flight one time, and we could feel the cap as we got up.
Exactly.
And you're like, the air was that much warmer at elevation, and I was like, wow. It puts it into perspective, big time.
And a lot of times Brian and I will be talking on the air, and I'll have this outflow from where there's supposed to be inflow, and I'm saying this is cut off. This storm cut this one off, and it's I'm in cool air, and so the whole setup on May 28th was totally contrary to anything that I had ever done before, because I was used to that kind of southeast inflow, that little inflow jet. I don't know if you call it that, but and that's where I hang out, because my theory is
That was my next question. Where's the best place to place your helicopter?
I want to be where everything's going into the storm
Okay.
and nothing's coming out. So if I'm in that inflow,
Right.
I know typically it's clear above me. I rarely see any lightning strikes close to me, and they're a mile and a half, 2-3 miles away. There's the tornado sitting right there. And so I know that in the front of the storm, the front flank downdraft and the shelf cloud, roll cloud, the gust front, the lightning, the heavy rain, the hail, it's all coming out over there, and I'm where everything's going up and in.
Yeah, so you're a little bit out of the way there, but you can still see what's happening.
Exactly.
And you're not. It's not rocking the copter.
It is. It
Oh,
is.
it is rocking it?
Well,
Inflow will do that.
yeah. And we call it mechanical
Well, that's-
turbulence, because it's
right.
the turbulence with that strong wind tumbling over hills and trees and buildings
Okay.
and stuff.
So do you have to maneuver around that?
Yeah, there's something I discovered really early on with this, and it was, and I found out quite by accident. I had been cruising thinking I need a little altitude here because I want to be sure I have, typically we'll fly 500-700 feet above ground level when we're covering things for the television station stuff. But I usually flew about 1,000 feet higher than that. I'd fly at 1,000 or 1,500 feet above the ground, and just to have a different perspective and stuff. And I was getting the snot beaten out of me. I mean, it
Really?
was so turbulent and a lot of vertical shear. So there was one situation very early on, I think maybe the second storm I had ever really committed to chasing. And I was forced, I think, because of some low-level clouds, to be down in the 500-foot range again.
Sure.
And I noticed that I wasn't getting beaten up as bad. And then I realized that if you're 500 feet off the ground, you have removed the opportunity for a lot of vertical shear, because once it gets that low, it's going horizontal. So I'm dealing with a lot of horizontal shear.
Wow.
Very interesting.
Yeah, but there isn't much as far as I'm not going to have 1,000 foot per minute downdraft if I'm 500 feet off the ground.
That's true.
So now almost all of most of the time that I'm flying it really, really low. Not overpopulated areas, of course, all the safety things that you do there.
Sure. Yeah.
So on this, on the May 28th, I'm seeing northeast flow into everything. And
Really?
my conclusion, based upon everything I'd covered before, was this is a nada. We're not getting anything.
Yeah, I kind of thought that too. And once we got home, and we got home about an hour before it all just went into Linwood. And at first, I was watching you, and I could tell you weren't real impressed yet.
No, not at all. And I mean, I thought,
and neither was I really, because driving home, of course, we were north of the front. I was like, I don't know, but once we went south, I was like, okay, now it's warming up. Stuff.
Well, the overcast that day, all day, was just thick.
yeah.
Did you find that at elevation too?
Good question.
Yeah, I did. Well, actually, and that was the other thing that was a little confusing too, because I didn't get into any murky, warm, moist air at all. And it was pretty cool. I think lower 70s that day.
Yeah, about 73.
And so it was all confusing and so foreign. And you're right. I dismissed it initially. And we had gone,
Right.
I'm flying up and down. Basically, strategically, there's certain ways to kind of hedge your bet. And I was just talking to somebody this morning about how cool it is because it's a chess game.
Yep.
And there's so much strategy involved that no one would think about. If there are two cells that we're watching and there's a strong southwest flow and I'm on the south end and here's one southwest and here's one northeast, I'm not going to put myself equidistant between the two. From a response standpoint, if one of them decided to really, lower and wall cloud develop and all that kind of stuff, I'm going to do that from a time standpoint. So if I've got this strong southwest flow and I can zoom northeastbound if I need to, I'm going to stay close to that south storm and I can be at that south storm within 10 minutes, but I can also be at the one that's 15, 20 miles north of me in 10 minutes.
Oh, that's
makes
funny.
sense.
That's how we do it on the ground.
Yeah, exactly. So
That's why when storms come up, you always want to go northeast. So if that one pooters, then go to the next one.
and
right?
I have the advantage of being able to utilize the strong southwest flow or whatever it is,
Sure.
because I can use that then to help me hedge that bet. But I want to be equidistant from a time standpoint, not equidistant, but equal in response time. It's a time thing and not a
Right.
distance thing. So, May 28th was so unbelievable.
I saw you when I noticed that I've watched you enough when we got home, and we were like, I'm going, should we take cover? Because if that sucker had stayed together, it was coming right for us.
Yeah.
We're at right now.
Yeah.
Well, I was out chasing that day, and I was just, I'd say maybe 3 miles south of Lone Star Lake. About the time
You were in it, yeah.
Well, and you were. I could see your chopper, and you were, I think, like just to the southwest of my position, and it looked like you were kind of riding the struggle bus there. Like maybe it just didn't look like I'm no pilot by any stretch, but it didn't look like a very comfortable position to be in.
And that was what was the uncomfortable part about it, not only from turbulence standpoint, and there's always turbulence that goes along with it, and it's never, it's never dangerous from the standpoint of, and one thing that we do too is we never turn into the storm. So if I'm at that classic supercell and I've got this southeast flow into it, I'm doing figure eights right on that edge, and so I'll go north, and then I'll make a right turn. Storm's over to my left, I'll make a right turn, because then I know, or even if I'm getting, closer and I hit, all of a sudden there's a little rougher turbulence I want, one quick nanosecond right turn and I'm back into where I know it's okay. So So I make that right turn and then kind of circle back around, and then I edge a little bit closer and closer. And then when it's time to track back the other direction, I'll make a left turn, but always turn away from the storm. If I make that turn and commit to that 90 degree, now I'm perpendicular to whatever could be out there, then I've got to make a 180 turn all the way out of that. Okay. And I could be in it for who knows how long.
Wow. And
strategically what I do is if something is, and I never, ever push it. It's as soon as you feel anything that might, just even a little burble that might be out of the ordinary,
like a little more rocketing
or,
than you're
well, you can kind of, it'll give you a little wave or a little, what do they call it, a God wink. It's almost like, this is wink, wink.
Feels a little uncomfortable,
get the F
a little unsettling.
Yeah, exactly. So
it's time to move, man.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So
wow, that's fascinating.
So the part with these storms were, and I'm trying to recall. I think we were tracking one here, and that one the cells merged. Am I correct? I think there was a
there was a cluster and 1 or 2 or 3 cells merged.
Okay,
and got its act together up toward Douglas County.
So what I'm thinking at that point, northeast flow. That second storm's cut off everything, and so this is going nowhere. So I'm probably down where you were talking about, Jim, and I get a call from Katie Horner on the two-way. Now, I communicate back and forth with the station via two-way radio.
Sure.
And I'm talking to studio control, I'm talking to live ops who's tracking where we're going, and I'm talking to usually Pete Grigsby on the two-way, and Katie as well.
I love Pete.
Well, the thing that people don't realize about Katie is she is a scientist.
Right.
And I don't know if you're aware of who she studied under radar.
No, I'm afraid I'm not. So.
And I can't remember his name. He's the guru.
Oh,
Les Lemon.
Yes.
I took a class from him. Phenomenal.
Yeah. Well, she studied under him. So her ability to read radar is unparalleled. I mean, all our...
Sure. Well, he's the godfather of the WSR-88D radar.
Is he really?
Network.
Yeah. Well, she can... so I'm cruising around down south, and Katie was on the two-way, and she said, "Johnny, I need you 10 miles north now." Because she could see where I was. Okay. Because this thing, we're seeing like massive rotation now.
All right.
Well, thankfully.
Was this before Linwood?
This is when everything was getting going down by Lone Star.
Okay. Gotcha. Yeah, just when it was getting tornadic.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so now I have this northeast wind and I have to go north. So typically I'd be able to zoom up there in about 5 minutes, but it took me 7-10 minutes to get there. And about the same time they're talking to Nick, and Nick is coming around the corner. Nick was actually headed a little further west, and they turned him around based upon that. And he started turning northeastbound. So at that time, I'm coming around, and here's this giant rain shaft. So, of course, I'm thinking, nothing there.
Yeah.
Because, and Brian and I have said it on the air before, if you have a lot of rain, it's all downdraft, and you can't have a tornado if there's a downdraft, which I still want to have that conversation about how all this
we'll talk more about that
mechanically works. And
I'm not sure I even understand it that well either. So
that's
for
which
what
is
it's worth.
For the miracle of all of this, so then I come around the corner, and Nick is on. He says, I don't know if he said he saw debris or he could see rotation. And I'm looking at this rain shaft, and I've got nothing. I can't see anything.
Now, are you east of the rain shaft at that point, or are you north?
I'm kind of a little north and east of it. So, because I'm thinking now, well, the tornado must be back behind this rain shaft.
There you go.
Right.
On the southwest corner of it. Okay. So I had no idea it was in the northwest corner of the rain shaft. So now Nick is talking about that. Katie sent me there. She's on talking about this massive rotation, and I caught a glimpse of just a little, just one cloud going in the front, right in the front of that rain shaft that I saw move and rapidly. And I was a believer. And I went, there's a freaking tornado in there.
Right.
And now I'm going, how? Yeah. Because I had just gotten done before she told me to go 10 miles north. I'm saying, I got nothing. I got a northeast flow here. It's cool.
Right.
not seeing anything classic at all. Right. So from that moment, I was somewhat, I don't want to characterize this wrong, not disoriented, but definitely confused about what was going on, because none of it.
I think that's very understandable, because I've been studying the storm myself, and it still confuses me some.
Yeah.
But by the time it got to Linwood, what you were showing on the copter
Yeah.
was a classic HP.
Well, see, I thought that it went through Lawrence. I thought this thing went
Right.
because
I can understand why you would think that. I
was
get it.
spending so much time navigating and staying in the right place because I've never been there before. I've never been north and east of the storm. And now what do I do?
Yeah, it
because
looked
I've got this.
nasty at
I've
that
got this inflow. I'm trying to show pictures. If I'm pointed into the inflow, I'm looking at out the back of the helicopter, and you can't see squat. So I can't do my regular figure eights like I normally do. And then I've got this like beaver's tail looking thing over here that's this massive inflow you can see stacking into that northwest corner of the storm.
And it's coming in from the northwest.
Right. And I'm like, what is going on?
That's like us when we chase coke wars. Everything's backwards.
Yeah,
You know?
it goes against
it's
all
almost
traditional thinking that you know.
Exactly.
And
what
it's
you
almost
practiced.
like this storm was rotated about 90 degrees around to the
Exactly.
northwest.
Exactly. So now when I think I'm going north, I'm going northeast. And so I'm trying to get.
So this messed up you as a copter pilot. Like, okay,
Yeah,
Where am I? What town are you?
I think it would be the typical I lost my bearings, and
Really?
I'm looking at the map and I'm thinking something's not right here, because now we're talking about Tonganoxie, and now we're talking about Baser, and now we're talking
Right.
about even further to the east.
To
Well, wait a
Bonner
minute, it just went
Springs
through
and-
Lawrence.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, so and I'm looking at Linwood, and I have no idea that Linwood is just southwest of Bonner Springs.
Right.
Right.
And at that point, I forfeited trying to do any position reports at all. And I told, I even said on the air, I said, you know what? I am not sure exactly where we are right now, so I'm going to leave it to you guys to pinpoint and show
What's
people where
going
it
on.
is.
You did
Smart
say that.
moves.
I remember
Yeah.
that.
So at that point, then I
When
knew.
you said that, we took cover.
Did you?
Yeah.
Well, I knew we were that it was approaching Linwood, but I thought Linwood was due north of Lawrence, so I was totally confused. But we could see it, and boy, talk about sobering. I know you guys have been there before,
Right.
all of you, to be, because we were flying at one point, we're circling over Linwood.
As it's getting
And
decimated.
looking at that and going, it's a foregone freaking conclusion. They're going
Right.
to get
It's
nailed.
happening.
Yeah.
This is gonna.
And I
They're
can't, and there's
screwed.
nothing I can do.
Right.
And so,
Isn't that such a helpless feeling?
oh yeah. And then we started seeing, and we're still not getting great pictures because it's like 90%
Oh, it's so
rain wrap.
grungy.
Yeah.
Too. I mean, not only that, there was a haze I noticed.
Right,
Even
right.
from your
Big time.
perspective.
Right. So
Usually your perspective clears it. It
well,
didn't.
the nice thing about the classic supercell is I've got this nice backlight that's silhouetting. Well, there was nothing with this. I mean, so murky and no contrast.
Right.
So it was
Like I said,
very
those
hard to see.
LCLs were off the charts. Though.
Yeah, I mean it was crazy.
But I still remember when you were over near Linwood, you got some images where you could kind of see the backside of the tornado, and you could see debris flying out of the back of that. And I thought, when Sean and I saw that, and we looked at the map and extrapolated the track, which comes right up into our neighborhood if it goes another 10, 15 miles.
They kept
So
together,
that's
which it
when we
looked
did-
like it would.
Yeah.
Yeah, it looked like it was possible. So we decided to start pulling a few things together and get in the basement. And again, that's because we were watching
You.
what you were showing.
Yes, it's all you, Johnny. Because I mean, we have friends at every station. Sorry, but we were watching you, and he actually wanted to take the cats and go in the car and get out. I'm like, no, let's just. We've never had a chance to take cover at home.
Yeah, there you go.
I don't want to leave because we have stuff here.
Yeah,
You know.
yeah.
I mean, my dad's ashes are here and stuff.
Oh,
It's like I don't
well,
want to
yeah,
leave all that.
absolutely.
So let's just write. We've got a underground bathroom. Let's just write it out. So what we just did is we took our chasing clothes and toiletries because we've been chasing for 3 days from the garage and just pulled it in the bathroom, which is just down the hall, and threw our cats in there and I had my
Shelter in
radar
place.
scope, put on velocity and wrote it out. and it fell apart right before here.
Yeah.
And it tried to reform
So what'd you think
momentarily
about-
above in northern Kansas City, and then, of course, it produced a tornado
Right.
over near Excelsior Springs
Yeah.
and southeast of
Yeah,
Kearney, I
did
guess.
you notice from your POV after Linwood, once it hit like around Bonner Springs, you can tell it was kind of falling apart. Did you notice that?
Well, at that point, we have to make a decision. The tornado's gone. So what are we going to, from a television standpoint, what are we going to do? And it was a no-brainer. Nick was continuing to track the storm. Had it really, fired up again, we would have probably flown up there. Now we're starting to get into some fuel considerations.
Oh, yeah, that's right. You got to.
Yeah, that's part of the whole strategy.
Right, that's
Because
hot,
Wheeler
yeah.
would have been your closest fuel.
Pardon me?
Wheeler Downtown Airport would have been
Exactly,
your closest
which is
fuel,
what we did.
which was kind of in that unknown path.
Right. So
it was going anyway.
So when it appeared as though there was there were no more reports of anything being on the ground, we went straight to Wheeler and did a hot refuel, basically still running, and then hopped back up, and then the decision was made, because now if I'm not mistaken, we were getting close to, I think we had an hour and a half of daylight. I can't remember.
That sounds about right.
So the decision was made. I called the station. I said, I'm thinking about, we need to go check out damage. From a newsworthy standpoint, obviously that's what we wanted. And if Nick hadn't been on it, I probably would have stayed there. But Nick is a fabulous chaser, and he knows exactly what he's doing. So
you're like, let's go back.
Yeah,
and
so we
see
went
what
back and
happened.
made the decision to
That's
start.
Smart.
And we kept flying southwest, and here's damage, and here's damage. I'm going, how far does this go? And we went all the way, I guess it was down to Lone Star.
Yeah.
Wow.
It was about a 29-mile track of the big tornado.
Unbelievable.
And most of that was with rain wrapped around it. And you don't see that very often, where it goes that long with all the rain wrapped around it. You can't see it.
And
And it's an EF4.
That's why when we saw the footage right around Linwood, the way it was so classically HP, I told him, I said, I don't think this is going to dissipate anytime soon.
Wow.
That's why I said we need to make plans
Yeah.
to
So
do
tracking back
something.
southwest, were you able to discern right away that there were multiple touchdowns and kind of where those were? Because you got the first look before anybody did.
We, and there's a competitive standpoint to that too. We knew that the other station's helicopter was still staying up to the north. And so, and I'm way too competitive. So I wanted to get the first pictures.
Sure.
And that's another strategic
Just like
thing
every
too.
storm chaser.
Yeah, exactly. So, and it was, I was surprised at how hilly it was down by Lone Star, all those big bluffs
Very.
and stuff. When we did that Lawrence tornado, May 8th of 2003, which was just a few days after the one that came through KCK, we picked it up at Lake Pomona.
Yes.
And followed it up to Lawrence. So I was familiar with those rolling hills and everything that nobody really even, I think, knows
Clinton
about. Yeah,
has it too.
exactly.
Right.
They've got the river valley there through Linwood, and that's a lot.
And the river valley. So once we went as far as I was willing to go southwest, then we started tracking back to the northeast and started looking at the different damage and all the old wives' tales that were blown out of the water, because there were a lot of houses that were on the other side of hills at the bottom of a little ravine, and they were gone.
They were gone.
If a tornado is strong enough, it'll go right up the hill and down the other side.
They don't
Well,
care.
and it was
A tornado's going to go wherever it wants.
Exactly.
I mean,
Yes.
that's just the way it is.
Oh, and you're right on the Tonganoxie split too.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, and
magic.
I've never it does seem to happen though.
Yeah, it does.
So to answer your question, yeah, we did see the hop, skip, and a jump, and saw some massive swirls in some fields where you could tell that how strong the rotation was.
Sure.
A lot of areas that weren't identifiable. There was one building that had been heavily damaged, another one next to it, and we had to zoom in to figure out it was a daycare center.
Oh no.
And I'm thinking hopefully everybody was gone.
Right.
In fact, was that on the weekend? I think it
was.
was it on a
believe.
Saturday or Sunday?
Actually, that tornado was on a Tuesday.
Was
Oh,
it?
it was?
Oh, wait a minute. Are we
Yeah,
talking
that
about
was
the
a-
Lawrence one? Or
May
I mean, the
28th.
earth-
Yeah, May
the
28th was a
28th,
weekday.
yes.
Yeah, I left my office.
That was a day after Memorial Day, so I think that was a Tuesday.
Okay.
That's when it was. Yeah.
So anyway, and then we got up to Linwood and that, what do you call it? The greenhouse. I had no
right.
idea what that was. And we're showing it.
Wow.
And somebody in the newsroom
Yeah.
radioed up. I think that was a greenhouse. Or
Yeah,
whatever.
it was. Yeah, it's a little indoor farming operation they've got there. It's
Yeah.
been there for years. They're an old customer of mine.
Oh, no kidding. Okay.
Yeah.
And then just a little beyond that, there were a couple of little small neighborhoods that were some nice houses that were gone. And then like 2 miles, a mile and a half from Bonner Springs High School was the last damage we saw.
Right.
Yeah, it just stopped right when I almost got to Bonner Springs. Boy, we were so lucky.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it didn't even hit Linwood proper. Just
Right,
the
and that was, I
outside.
think, a lot of people don't realize that it was almost a little subdivision just outside of the city of
A
Linwood.
bunch of
Right.
houses
Yeah,
that were
there's a
all
lot of
spread
new
out.
development out there,
Now, if
too.
it would have hit the downtown, oh gosh.
Now, the west side of Bonner did have some, like, it had some major tree damage to it. 'Cause there was like a trailer park that I drove through there, and I mean, they were just, I'd say 6 to 8 inch limbs just littered and flooded roads. I mean,
gosh,
yeah,
yeah.
and it was a trailer park, so I mean, you throw a 8-inch tree on top of a trailer, it doesn't.
Oh yeah, it's not happy about that at all, I'm sure.
Yeah, the KC metro area really dodged a bullet on that one.
Now, your figure
and
8 maneuver
speaking
that you
of-
make up there, you're not, that's not Flight School 101. That's something you came up with on your own, right?
Yeah, I mean, when I did the May 4th, 2003 tornado,
Yeah.
I will tell you that I probably didn't know what I was doing.
So that's when you figured that,
That
was
was
kind
the
of a
next
key
thing I was
moment
gonna
where it
talk
clicked with
about.
you.
Yeah, I'm a chicken at heart, so I never got in trouble. I was never anywhere where I shouldn't have been. I did have
Sure.
a little heart to
was a
heart with the rear
tough
flank
day.
downdraft, which was a learning experience.
You know, I was chasing for Channel 9 too.
Oh, were you really? Okay.
I was on the ground.
On that day? Oh gosh, I didn't know.
I
that.
had, I actually chased for Channel 9 for 5 years.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Cool.
I just never knew you then.
Never. Yeah.
No. But I was the only one out. It was just me and when I went out that day, same thing as May 28th. It was cloudy. It was icky. It was
Yeah.
nasty. It was
cool.
Yeah.
And then
but
this
I
was the warm front coming up.
But I was
triple
looking,
point.
I was forecasting, and I went, if we could just get a little bit of heating, then
And
things
wasn't
are going to
that-
go berserko.
Wasn't that a high risk day?
Yes, we were under
Just
high
a
risk.
A really
and there
small
was a-
high risk area, if I'm
There
not
was a
mistaken.
stationary front, which is why we also got May 8th.
Oh,
Because
okay.
that front didn't move.
Yeah, it didn't go anywhere. Yeah.
Yeah, it stayed there for days.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why sometimes in Kansas City or the Kansas City area, once that front moves north, it could just sit there.
Mm-hmm.
And it could sit there for days. And then you're going to have round after round after round. And that's what happened that year. And I remember going out and I called the station and Pete answered, Pete Grigsby. And I
Mm-hmm.
said, anyone out? I mean, where's the other guys? Because I was the only girl. And where's Busby? Where's
Mm-hmm.
Rowlands? Where's everybody? Oh. And I was like, so it's just us today? I mean, this is going to be a big day. And he's like, yep, I guess it's going to be just us. I said, well, we'll do the best we can.
Well,
But then I went out to Topeka, met up with Rick Schmidt, and we ended up going way up north, so I was way out of position. So I'm hearing you, and I got Pete in one ear, my family in the other, going, take cover once it was starting to hit Gladstone.
well,
That was an insane day.
yeah, and I self-launched on that day. It
Yeah.
was.
So,
I called Pete
what's
and I
your
said, "What do
story,
you think?"
man?
Well, I mean, I just in that whole scene that week. I actually came around in front of the storms, and then I went around the north end of it and came way back around the backside.
Right.
And I was coming under the flanking line.
About what area do you think you were?
It would have been almost in Bonner.
About,
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
So
that's
right
when
out
it
by
really
K7.
got its
So in
actual-
fact, I remember tracking down K7 and seeing all the spotters on, on K7. And so I went, well, I must be in the right place.
Yeah.
I mean, when in doubt, follow the other guys, you know. So we came around, and that was another very murky day. And,
Right.
and the position we were in had the tornado, the backdrop was the rain shaft.
Right.
So I remember coming up to 435 south of the Speedway, and I don't know if I called down to the station or Pete and I are doing a back and forth.
Yeah, that's when it did a visible.
Yeah, I think I said, hang on, Pete, I think I've got one on the ground right over here. And my camera guy at the time zoomed in on it, and there it was, just to the east of the speedway.
Yep.
And
just kind of rolling along with it.
massive adrenaline dump.
Oh, I'll bet.
And I'm going, oh my God.
Yeah.
Because, I thought I'd seen so many tornadoes before, which I
Right.
never. I tell people now, and I say, well, how do you know it's a tornado? I say three things: rotation, rotation, and rotation. And because when you see it, there's no mistaking.
Yeah.
All the ones I thought I'd seen before, it's like, are you
it's
kidding
like,
me? Yeah, you see
right.
a real
Oh,
one, it's like,
we've all been there, dude.
So that was your first helicopter tornado there.
yeah. And it was,
And that was a good one to be your first.
and that was a massive
So
southwest
I'm
flow.
sure
It was
did
like
you
a
follow
30,
it all
40.
the way?
We followed it. It got rain wrapped, and
Yeah,
I
it
lost
did.
it. And then we made the decision to go back. So I followed it up just to the west of down. There's that power plant out there, and I followed it up to about the power plant. And they were really concerned that it had hit Parkville. That's what we thought. So I flew up there. Then I got in the rear flank downdraft, so that was pretty bumpy.
That's scary.
Now, what was that like? Did you?
I was gonna say I'm scared of RFDs on the ground. I couldn't
Yeah,
imagine in the
yeah.
air.
It wasn't a real strong one, believe it or not.
Really?
Well, obviously, the further away I am from the storm, the less velocity there's going to be on that RFD.
Sure.
So it had progressed northeast enough so that it was a rough
Well,
ride.
the sucker was going at 50, 55.
Yeah, it was flying. So we made the decision to come around and take a look at that at the damage there too. But the one and then
and then it ended up going through Claycomo,
Yeah.
Liberty, and all
and
that.
then, and it's really
I never caught up to it because we had to go through. By the time I got word, of where it was, we were so out of place, and it was going so fast.
Well,
and I had to go through downtown and all that, and we were actually dodging debris in the road once we got north of the river.
Oh yeah, it was a mess. When I pulled into Gladstone I started out by the Speedway coming up 435 heading north, and then I jumped 70 west and just kind of tracked along.
We did
with
635 and went by Parkville, and that's when we started seeing the debris.
Did you have trouble seeing it too?
Yes. Yeah.
it was- it was rain
and I
wrapped.
wasn't really, chasing for photos or video back then. I just liked looking at severe weather.
Yeah.
I didn't even know I was
I
storm
was chasing for them, and I was
Yeah.
trying to get them something. But at that point, cars were stopping. There's debris everywhere. And once we got to where 29 and 35 merges, and I was trying to get on 35 because I could tell it was moving towards Liberty, and all you could see was just gray up there.
Yeah.
There was this guy whose car was turned around, and his what do you call it? The hood all the way to the windshield.
Yikes.
And I was like, I bet that guy was pretty freaked out right about now. But luckily he was okay.
Yeah.
But at this point I thought, there's no way I'm going to catch up to this sucker. So you did a great job that day.
Well,
man.
and that's what then put the storm chasing on the map.
It sure did.
And
because
I think I'd only been at Channel 9 for a short time.
Yeah.
I'd come over from Channel 4.
Channel 4,
And so, that was good right out of the chute to come up with something like that.
Yeah, right?
And then from that moment on, it became...
and that's why they didn't use any of my footage, because you took it over.
I don't
Just
know.
kidding. I'm kidding.
I don't know.
I'm kidding.
What kind of chopper were you in?
Jet Ranger.
That was the
back
Jet
then.
Ranger
Yeah.
back then. Okay.
And it was really...
It had to have been surreal for you.
Yeah, they all are. But
yeah.
I think that at that point it became very obvious how powerful those pictures were. And again, just personally, I don't ever. I know there are colleagues, around the nation that take credit for saving lives.
Sure.
When they're showing pictures like that,
We just say we aid in
yeah,
helping.
we
aid.
firefighters, first responder, they go and they save lives. We tell people that you need to save yourself.
Yes, and then it's up to them to do it.
But just to know that there had been that low injury and death count with 35 miles, I think, was that KCK tornado up to Liberty.
Yes.
So not only was it, in this industry, you look at things in so many different ways, and there's value to the television station in so many different ways. there was value. The ultimate value was keeping people safe,
Right.
helping them keep themselves safe. The other value was from a reporting standpoint, informing people
Right.
with the damage and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
There was promotional value because we had exclusive pictures and we could show that we provided a better product. And then there was the value of the position in the market of who's perceived to be the station that can give you the best coverage.
Sure.
Maybe that's related to the promotional part of it.
Absolutely.
But perceptually, then people, and I know the research panned this out, that people saw that as very, very valuable.
Right.
So it was on myriad levels. It was great for the television station. But the great thing about Channel 9, and I don't know, maybe all the other stations are this way too, but the great thing about Channel 9 is, and the weather team that I'm involved with now, it's so purpose-driven.
Right.
And it is so doing everything for the right reasons.
Right.
Is it promotional? Yes. Does it get ratings? Yes.
isn't that
So
kind
does
of
that
the point?
translate?
Well,
But
it still
at the same
follows
time-
you. It still follows you guys to this day. You know, because of May 4th, 2003. You know, we had Joe in here a couple weeks ago on the podcast, and
Lawyer.
he spoke with he spoke with Andy
Andy
Bailey, and I guess everybody that the NWS surveyed about the Linwood tornado said that they were tuned into television as their primary source of
Yeah.
keeping safe.
Yeah. I
But
heard
so,
that,
so
yeah.
what you started with on May 4th has still continued on to, I mean, it's in people's minds now. Where do we go? Weather radio? No, we're going to television.
Mm-hmm.
Which leads me into, so 4 days later.
Another save.
Another one.
Well, and again, this is what's so cool
May
about
8th.
yeah. I consider myself someone who can be dispatched.
Could you believe that was actually happening again? I mean, I know all tornadoes are different, but like, oh my gosh, I have to really cover this tornado that it tore off that whole apartment building.
Well, we were took off from Johnson County Executive Airport and flew out I-35. It's raining, low clouds. It's like, seriously. And then we went through on the other side of the warm front. And right there is a tornado on the ground by Lake
Boundary.
Pomona. It was very, very, I mean, I went from one climate almost, or one completely separate air mass into another, and it was night and day. And then, and there's the tornado, classic tornado right there. And then it was a real cycler. It would produce this beautiful tornado from a structure standpoint. None of them are beautiful from what we know they can do, but from a visual standpoint. And then all of a sudden it would dissipate and, would occlude a little bit further to the north, if I've got that right. And so I don't know if you remember the radar signature of that storm.
I vaguely do.
Okay.
What I remember the most is once it hit that boundary and how all of a sudden, instead of just roping out, it just,
So we're tracking it from Pomona, and it's coming up those bluffs, and it's headed for Lawrence, and we can see Lawrence in the distance, and it's dropped, and every time it drops, it's a little bit weaker. And a little bit weaker. And so I'm watching, that's before we had any radar in the helicopter at all, and I am monitoring the station and seeing what Brian is showing on radar, and that's how I know where to be. So I'm looking at this get smaller, the signature is smaller and smaller. Meanwhile, down by Ottawa, this massive updraft, and this thing is like cauliflower. It's, the structure is like all there, and you can just, it's overshooting top. You can just see classic everything, and so I radioed down to the weather center. I said, "Hey, ask Brian if he wants me to move over to this other storm since this one is dissipating," and I was already headed in that direction. And they said, "No,
it doesn't matter what Brian says. I'm already going."
Yeah. Well, he said, "You know what? Let's stick with the one. We know it's produced one. Let's stick with it." Well, it's approaching Lawrence, and now it's just this little tiny thing on radar.
Right.
And all of a sudden, there it comes again. It was a very weak tornado, but it was enough to do all that damage.
Sure.
And again, a save because Brian obviously knew what he was talking about. But the amazing thing was, once that did the damage, we flew right back and looked at the damage, and then we said we better track it northeast and see what it's doing.
Right.
So I fly 2, 3, 4 miles northeast, and I'm looking, and I don't see any storm.
Right. Just the whole storm just went
collapsed.
Gone.
It was gone.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't know exactly what happened that day because I wasn't out chasing in that area, but
I do.
A lot of you've told me, and a lot of people told me that storm just fell apart. And I think what happened,
it hit that boundary.
Yeah, tornadoes like boundaries or just south of boundaries because the shear increases and the convergence and all that sort of thing. But sometimes if the boundary is sharp enough and the air either gets cooler or drier or something, it just poof. Well, and that's what happened that day.
Yeah, it didn't just kill the tornado; it killed the whole storm.
Yeah, that's what was.
Bang.
Yeah, that's what was.
I was nowcasting for Jim Duncan. And the guys that were chasing for Channel 9 that day, I was at home.
Oh, really? Okay.
Because my son was small then, and I couldn't go out that day. So I said, I'll nowcast for you. So I was nowcasting, and they were all like on like K10 and stuff trying to get to it. And I said, it's gone. I mean, it's just like, what do you mean, the tornado? I said, no, the whole storm is just gone.
And talk about
it.
Thankful, because that was headed right for the campus. That would have gone straight through the campus.
Oh my God!
So
another bullet dodged.
That was one of the most amazing things, and was from your footage because I had you on and I had my computer, and just the tornado went, and then the whole thing went, and it was just like clear air, and I was like, and they didn't believe me. I'm like, no, I'm not kidding. The whole storm is just—it's like it hit a wall and just went. And
Brian and I are on together, and I listen back at how nonchalant we were. Brian goes, "Oh, there goes a roof." I said, "There goes a roof," and he goes, "Oh, yeah, there goes another one." And we're watching it do damage, and then again it was gone, and thankfully so, because that would have been. There's so many what ifs in all of the ones that I've covered that it's crazy.
And then I think the next one you got, if I would have just stayed home, I could have just gone 5 miles from my house, near Dearborn.
Yeah.
I went to north central Kansas. I did get 6 tornadoes that day.
Oh,
but if I could have just stayed home, I wouldn't have had to drive so far and saw a nice big wedge, for a few minutes. It wasn't that long on the ground, was it? That was May 29th, 2004.
Yeah. It was the day before Memorial Day. It was on a Sunday.
Right. How did you know about that? I've always wanted to ask you that.
So they had a tornado warning issued, and I always know. Well, we know several days ahead of time, so I think I was ready to go.
But I didn't look in that area that day.
Well, then Pete calls and says, "Hey, go ahead and shoot on up there and see what you can see." So we get up there, we see the storm they're talking about. It did look like there was a little wall cloud with it initially, but then it was all kind of rain wrapped, and we're on the west side of it, which I really didn't want to be on that side, but it worked out better for us at that point. And then and I've still got the video, which is the raw video is really cool.
Nasty.
Because
I
it's
love it.
at least 10 miles, maybe not that far, but at least 5 miles southeast of us, and I'm watching a storm, and I'm seeing just this little lowering on the back side of it. So I told my camera guy, we're going to go down and check this out. So I'm radioing to Pete now. We're going to go down and check this one out, and the closer we got, the more we could tell it was the whole storm was rotating. I mean, it was so obvious that,
big old wall cloud.
Yeah, and then this classic wall cloud develops, and the entire southeast corner of that storm lowered. So this is in the infancy of me chasing. So I'm thinking giant wedge tornado,
right before the 2003 year, right?
And so
right after.
Yeah, so this whole thing is like. The wall cloud is 100 feet off the ground.
Right.
And we can see under, and then I see if you, I don't even know dimensions, but probably a mile wide, at least a mile wide. So
that whole thing was tornado.
Wall cloud the whole thing was rotating, and then in one little corner, we saw a little spin up, and then another one over here, another one, and slowly but surely, it began to condense into, or however you want to say it, but get more and more wrapped up, and the smaller it got, obviously, the more rotation there was, and then it was
a sick wedge for a while.
Yeah.
How long was that on the ground? Do you know? Because again, I was out in north central Kansas.
I think our coverage of it on the ground was like 40 minutes.
Really?
Yeah,
Wow.
It was down for a long time.
Yeah, and again, I could have just drove, and instead I could.
You need to get a helicopter. I'm telling
I know, right?
That's storm chasing for you.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. It's like when I came home the next day and I saw that, I went, you've got to be kidding me. I drove all that time and spent all night, even had to get a friend out of the mud. And I could have
That's storm chasing right there.
Could have just went 10 miles to my east and boom.
There you
and
go.
just sat there and then said, okay, I'm going to go home and watch TV now. I'm done. But that's pretty, that was impressive.
That was, I think at the time, that was the first time a tornado had ever been videotaped from the very start, wall cloud, through its entire life cycle to roping out nonstop, and ever, let alone from a helicopter. I know that the National Weather Service, I think, used that tape. I can't remember who was the guy who was
Mike Hudson.
Mike Hudson, yeah. I think because we actually took him up to, there were 2 fatalities. I don't know if you remember that.
Oh, there was from that?
Not at Dearborn. Then it dissipated and then reformed. Same deal.
Really? I didn't know that.
You know, took a breath and got going. And we flew him over where the fatalities were. And if I have this story right, it was 2 elderly ladies who lived in a farmhouse, and they had a storm shelter, and there was evidence that they had been in the storm shelter. And this is what we preach when we do the schools all the time, because this was the classic storm comes through, rain, hail, wind, lightning, everything up, you know, everything's quiet. And then a mile back behind that, here comes the tornado. So they think they were in, I hope I have this right. They think they were in that storm shelter, which was like 50, 100 feet from their house.
Right.
And then they'd come out, and we identified the tornado touchdown, reformed again about a quarter mile south and west of their house, and then took out their house. And that, and they think they were in between. They may have been trying to get back. No. They were in their 80s, so I don't think they were moving that fast.
Well, yeah, and hearing all that rain and hail and stuff, you're thinking that's probably the tornado. And then, and I noticed your video was it was clear air. I mean, you could see the wedge.
It was unbelievable.
And it was really churning.
Yep.
So that was a classic supercell where you could see everything.
It was on HP.
I guess it's important to clarify that, like on the May 28th storm, you're not going to have all this rain and hail and then a gap and then here comes the tornado, because the tornado was in the rain.
Yeah.
Right.
But that case there, the Dearborn case,
And
May 29th of 2004.
Yeah, it makes it. That's what makes it so hard for us to teach people how to pay attention.
Well, and that's what makes it.
Because they're all different.
And one thing that we were talking about on the air was this is the most dangerous kind of tornado because we can't even see it.
Right.
And so we know you can't see it coming. Don't get fooled. You know, there is a tornado in that rain shaft. Of course, everybody thinks when you see the video, everybody thinks it's the rain shaft is the tornado.
Yeah, there's this rain shaft that's about 3 or 4 miles wide. A lot of people do think that's the tornado.
Right.
The tornado was over on the northwest side, but it's buried back in the rain. You can't see it, but it's very easy to confuse people.
Call that a sheriff-nado.
A what?
Sheriff NATO.
No, sure.
Which we get a lot of those, but
But the May 29th one was, thankfully I don't. Other than
I didn't know about
the part that we
that's
shot.
Sad.
Yeah, and that was that's before I had. Well, in fact, it was the people at Garmin were apparently listening to my coverage. And Pete would say, "Johnny, where are you now?" Well, and I think I had a Loran in there at the time, which was the old low frequency kind of faux GPS. But I said, well, it looks like we're about, and so I'm dialing in KCI. We're about 11 miles to the northwest of KCI. Now, I don't have any, I'm not unfolding maps and stuff, and there's no GPS. So they actually donated a GPS receiver
Well,
to me
bless their hearts.
Well, they didn't know. I mean, it was so pathetically obvious.
That's
I didn't know where I was. Yeah.
Well, there's a lot to keep track of in the air there.
Sweetheart,
Exactly.
we still do
I don't-
paper maps.
Yeah.
We don't do GPS.
And-
we
and
don't
we get
trust
confused
it.
on the ground
But that's just
sometimes.
us.
Well, in the thankfully now the technology, I have radar up there. I have everything that I need.
Right.
But still, it's just a visual for me. It's like comparing what I'm seeing out the window to what I'm seeing on radar, and there's that latency built into any radar return you're getting, and that's one thing that I don't know if it is emphasized enough, that the National Weather Service, NEXRAD is 5 minutes old by the time people are seeing it. Well, if the storm's going 60 miles an hour, I could show on the Garmin, and we get the feed from Sirius XM, so it can be 7 to 10 minutes behind.
Sometimes, yeah.
And so I'm flying through bright red, level 5, but the storm's 5 minutes north, 5 miles north and east of me because it's going 60 miles an hour.
Moved.
Yeah.
Wow.
Unbelievable.
You had another good one in Salina, didn't you? Like 2014 or something or 20.
Yeah, that was
12.
April sometime.
Right. It was 7 years ago.
yeah. I think
good
that was on my
video.
birthday, as a matter of fact, April 15th.
Ah, dang it. I still
That was a
want
good
on
one.
my
You had it
birthday.
from start to finish too.
Well, the interesting thing about that was we had gone down to Emporia to track a storm that was coming up I-35, and it obviously was going nowhere. And the station, I don't know where we got the information that there was a wedge tornado south of Salina getting ready to go through Salina. So I said, permission to go there. Well, it was a direct south flow. So, and about 50 knots at altitude. So I got, 60 mile an hour wind up there, and we were in Salina, I think, in 20 minutes. And,
Wow.
and there it was. I may have really gigantically overstated that right there, but and we got there, and there it was. It never got wound up. It never really formed into any kind of massive tornado, but it was a classic multiple vortice tornado, and the one reason I like to show that to people, especially chasers or whatever, is there was a time when it looked like the tornado's over here, and one of those vortices was half a mile. It circled back around a half mile to the southwest.
Wow.
Really?
Yeah, I'll show you that if you haven't seen the video.
No,
I've
I don't
seen
think
it, but
I haven't
don't-
seen it, so I need to see it.
And then there are 3 that are
I
just
did.
doing a little dance, a little waltz all together. And
I call it merry-go-round.
yeah. But a real example of how it can come up and bite you in the butt, because you're thinking you're clear, and that was another day when it was I would say at least 50 cars up this highway that I'm tracking up.
I bet you're
chasers.
laughing your butt up. Like, ha, I'm up here, and I got a clear
I think
shot.
I detected some gestures from down there, but I'm not. You're number one, whatever. So, but that was cool. Yeah, that was, and it was classically backlit too. So the video was really fabulous.
Yes. No,
guy-
I've seen it on YouTube.
The guy who was my cameraman that day, I said, Chris, how you doing? And he goes, well, considering there's a tornado right outside my window, I'm fine. I'm doing pretty good.
Yeah, other than that.
Yeah, and it because that is surreal. The view is, I've never seen a tornado from the ground.
I'd love to go with you
So
sometime,
I don't know.
but I'm too scared.
I'd love to see one from the air like that sometime.
I feel like more control on the ground. It's just,
Well, there's more, because ultimately you never know what's lurking in what the air is
but
doing.
at least up there you can see better.
It's fascinating to me to think that if there wasn't any water vapor that we could see, or condensation we could see, then we wouldn't know what the wind was doing. I mean, in essence, other than if there was no cloud associated with it, we couldn't see what the wind was doing. And so, thankfully, we have those visual cues, but it's just air, and that's what is to me the most compelling part of it, because it's the
air.
miracle of the atmosphere.
it's fluid
And-
dynamics.
Yeah.
Well, you put that very well. You put a little bit of air and water vapor and heating to it, and And on a rotating Earth, it's amazing some of the things that happen.
It never ceases to amaze me, and especially and then
Yeah, you never get tired of it.
Well, and getting my butt kicked on the 28th when I just didn't know what was going on. So, and it's like flying is like this. You never stop learning.
Sure.
And you never stop witnessing the miracle of the atmosphere with every storm that forms and every tornado that you see and every wall cloud in rotation. And you just look at it and go, from my perspective, there are matchbox cars down there, and and here's this it's a video game. Here's somebody showing me this tornado right outside my window.
Right.
But yeah, there is absolutely nothing
That's
like
cool.
it. Absolutely nothing like it.
Was the Freeman 2015 near Harrisonville, was that any different for you? Because that was kind of a dirty one, too.
That was pretty late, wasn't it? Didn't it start getting
Yeah, it was
dark?
like around 7 or so.
Yeah, I think we lost light on that one. I did a little bit of chasing once a night, not far from, it wasn't a tornadic thing.
me.
Oh, yeah. And it's just,
Yeah, chasing at night is awesome.
yeah,
Dangerous, yeah.
well, the lightning, it just doesn't make any sense. But so
Right.
we covered that one, and I think that one was pretty weak. And then the one we got in Sedalia. I don't know if you're aware of that there was one that formed just outside
that was
of town.
right after Joplin.
Yeah.
We were chasing for the Weather Channel, and we'd been chasing down in Oklahoma, and we did Joplin, and then we went to Oklahoma,
Mm-hmm.
and then we were coming home.
Yeah, and it was right after that somewhere.
But we were late, and then we found out about it, and I was like, if we would have left an hour earlier, we could have veered off and chased that.
Yeah, Sedalia was
That
heavy
was
damage.
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah, heavy damage there.
And it's not easy to chase on the ground there.
The little known, it's not a secret, but if it had not been for the Joplin tornado that day, the story would have been the tornado that went right around Waverly that we shot.
Yeah.
And we were almost out of range, so we had to have some altitude to get our signal back. And it was headed right for Waverly. And that was going to be the big story.
Yeah.
And then they sent us down to Sedalia because they thought there was another cell developing there. That washed out. And I was flying back home, and Buzz got on the 2A, and he goes, "Hey, JR, where are you?" And I think I was like north of Warrensburg,
Okay.
or pretty close to Whiteman Air Force Base. I said, and I told him where I was, and he said, "How far are you from Joplin?" And we'd been flying for like 5 hours. I said, "Oh, dude, you're not asking me to go down to Joplin, are you?"
That's a grind.
And he said, I think he asked me, "How long would it take you to get to Joplin?" And I said, "Oh, dude, you're not asking me to do that, are you?" And he goes, I said,
There's just an
at
EF5 going on.
some point, he said, it's huge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Joplin is one of
that
the
was a
worst things
national story.
I've ever seen.
That was my
So-
first EF5.
Oh, really? Yeah. So it was, we were within an hour, and made the turn, southwest, and got down there. And this is, I'll never forget this, because in coming up on scenes before, they were all very similar. Flashing red lights, emergency equipment. So we're flying down this highway. First, we had to hold outside of town a little bit because the storm was still passing through. And we're talking to the tower at the airport, and he's saying, "Yeah, apparently we had a big tornado." So we're we're flying down this road, and I see up ahead emergency equipment, and I see some damage, and I see a building that's obviously under demolition and
It's
stuff.
just gone.
Well, no, I'm
just-
thinking here's a building under, that they're demoing or whatever. And so they're zooming in on the damage and everything, and the sun came down under the back of the storm, the anvil top back of the storm. Or I hope I'm getting that right. But anyway, it came down below the clouds. Sure. And quite rapidly then, because it's so low in the sky, it's lighting out to the east. And so it's almost like somebody pulled up a curtain.
Whoa.
And I looked to my left, and it was this giant swath of yellow. So the sun is pretty low in the sky, so there's a lot of amber to that. But it was the trees that had nothing on them. It was
So
raw
the sun
wood.
was reflecting off the raw wood?
It just looked yellow, and on either side of it, this dark green. So it was a very rich, almost like that golden hour they talk about in photography.
Yeah.
It had all these warm hues to it, and so it looked like this giant path of yellow, and my heart hit my feet, and I knew immediately, and I told my camera guy, I said,
Yep.
"Oh man, there are people that didn't survive this."
Right.
So, and that building I thought was under demolition was the hospital. And their
St. John's?
their curtains coming out of
was St.
the windows and everything, and it looked like the building was tilted. So then we went and shot some stuff. There's some kind of extenuating circumstances to some of the stuff we shot, but we kind of it just worked out that we didn't really zoom in or go looking for stuff. We saw the Home Depot ceiling girders or whatever you call those that were, and flying back, they interviewed me coming back on the news, and you just couldn't describe it. I know you guys saw it from the ground, but from the air,
Actually, from our POV, because we were ahead of it, it looked like rain.
yeah,
before the tornado hit.
And I remember we actually had to go through downtown Joplin to get out of the way to get to 44.
oh my gosh,
So I'm like, you hear the sirens, which they always blare in Springfield, and I'm watching these people going in and out of stores, and I'm like tapping, I'm driving, and I'm looking at we had Barron's, at the time, and, just shear markers galore, because everything had merged. We had Jay Annell behind us, too, because he caught up with us, and was like, I'm just going to tag you, and I'm like, smart. Anywho, but I was like looking at all these people, and I just wanted to get a bullhorn and say, take cover, because we knew this
And the
was
sirens
not
had been going.
But they've been going so much that people were like, yeah, whatever.
yeah.
And I
That's
thought, this is so not
And
good.
the other problem there was you just couldn't see it until it was
You
almost
couldn't.
right
And
on
once
you.
we got
Another
on
HP
44
storm with a lot of haze.
Oh, was
and
it? Okay.
And it's that situation where if they can't see it,
But once we got
don't
to
do
44, then you could see a little white
Yeah.
in the
No kidding.
middle,
Yeah, I didn't
and
know
we
that.
Knew, and it was a wedge. I mean, we knew.
And-
I wanted to go back in, and they blocked us.
it was a mile wide, right?
yes, it was.
yeah.
And 30 miles an hour, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, 25 to 30. And
So-
it went east and slightly east southeast, and it formed
And it had
right on the southwest corner of Joplin. And it went right through the
Yeah.
city.
Think about this.
The worst situation.
Talk about hell on earth. Somebody who was who would have been directly in the path of that from the time it started,
Till it
a mile wide at 30 miles an hour. That's 2 minutes.
And
Yeah,
plus, I heard
200
there was
plus
a
mile an hour
hole
winds.
in the middle to where almost like a hurricane, and it was calm
Really?
for a minute.
Really?
And then it started back up again. There's actual video on YouTube where people were taking cover in a freezer or
Yeah, I
something.
saw. Yeah, that's
And then
it
it's
went.
calm, and then it comes back.
If you
Yeah, on a large tornado
Oh
like
my
that, you
God,
can
it's
actually get a small,
never seen anything like
something
that.
like an eye in the middle of it if that goes over
Yeah,
the other winds.
it
I
had-
saw
it
that in
had
The
an
Wizard of
eye.
Oz. I remember.
Yeah.
It was that exact
I
same
mean,
thing.
it was just, and then my cousin worked at, I couldn't remember which hospital. Mm-hmm. So, of course, I'm trying to work for the Weather Channel, and I'm thinking, I got to find my cousin. I have family down there.
It buried a medevac helicopter right by the
But yeah, she worked for the other one, and so she was working with others. But anyway, so moving on. You want to talk about other tornadoes or what else? What do you
I
want to
don't know. It's up to you guys. I mean, it's you could go.
I'll talk
on
about
and
whatever
on
you
and
want,
on.
Johnny.
Yeah, we're weather geeks, I guess.
Well, me too. And again, for me, just the fact that we're coming up with all this technology now, and I often look at Doppler radar and realize a little bit of the unintended consequence with Doppler was that now I remember everybody's so excited. Now we can see storms turning. Mm-hmm. Well, now we have to issue a warning for every storm that turns.
And what if it turns back?
And what would you say the percentage of storms that rotate produce a tornado? 20?
Oh boy, that's a tough
Not
one.
very
Isn't that a tough
high.
one?
It's less than that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I'd say about 7.
I should know that figure. I'd have to go look up some
Very,
figures on
very
that.
small. I
mean,
that.
There's a lot of supercells or storms that rotate out there, but just a small percentage of them produce tornadoes.
And obviously, they have to, if they see a storm rotating, I don't think they necessarily wait for the couplet.
No.
You've got to say there's, and now the terminology storm capable of producing a tornado. So I think, unfortunately, the unintended consequence there is that there are, I won't call them false alarms because you never know. I mean, it's a better alarm than ever, but there are almost more of them.
Well, a lot of the dual pole products, I think, kind of fill in some of those gaps with like correlation coefficient and stuff like that. Really help kind of discern of, from a radar standpoint without having a visual on the ground or from the sky.
Yeah, that is an improvement because that correlation coefficient, it's a way of seeing debris in the air, and when they can see that, often they can confirm that a real tornado is on the ground. So I think that's helping.
Yeah, and that's what Katie referenced that to me before she was talking about it on the air, and I'm going, huh? Yeah, that's what I was going to say. It's that correlation.
that thing,
bad
whatever
name,
it is.
Yeah.
I do have a question. When do they decide to send you out? I mean, do they put out on the street first, or when who makes that decision?
It is a collaborative effort.
If you can answer that.
I defer to, we all kind of have our own areas of expertise. I know Katie chiming in with radar. Of course, Nick knows everything about the atmospherics of it all. Brian understands everything and then how to properly and
assimilate
everything and present the message. His ability to distill this, and I've always said
he could do this in his sleep.
He does good with orchestras.
Yeah.
He could phone this.
You know
stuff
what?
In
He is like a conductor. It's
Really?
exactly what
Absolutely.
he's doing.
He is. I mean, he's a phenomenal musician.
And so he is calling in all these different areas of observation that we have
Now,
and
he used to
reporting.
say back in the day when I chased, when we'd have our yearly meetings, he's like, you all can go out there and do this. You're stupid. I'm going to sit in the studio. And I was like, yeah, you're probably right.
Well, I will tell you that it's incredibly methodical now. It's very,
I'm sure it is.
very steeped in research of what any certain setup is going to be. I wouldn't be giving anything away here. We will make a decision on where I should be to have the proper response time. For instance, if SBC's put out something that upon initiation of this storm potential, severe storm potential, initiation is where we're going to see perhaps the greatest potential, and it's going to go linear, and then everything's so. It's much more important for me to be close to where initiation is going to be because I'm going to have a small window to catch anything and warn if anything develops. On a classic, if they're talking about long track tornadoes, I may go to a certain area. Of course, we pay attention to our DMA, that radius around Kansas City that we're quite obligated to protect.
Within the metro viewing area.
Yeah. And so when I went up to Salina, that was just because there was no threat
Nothing
here.
here.
And in the context of any tornado
any
video is
storm.
good video, and compelling. So
that's how we roll. I mean, if Kansas City looks better than Salina, well, we're going to stay here.
Right, exactly.
And roll the dice.
Yeah.
And Sedalia doesn't have a chopper.
No. And,
right.
And in fact, they're just, I think some of the Oklahoma City stations have people who have done it for a while, but otherwise there are not a lot of people out there doing it. But,
what do you think about drones?
I think they have a place, definitely. I'm for anything that's going to help from a research standpoint, for sure.
I figured you'd find them to be a pain in the ass because it's like, hey, you're getting in my territory, man.
Yeah.
Well, drones don't have the range like.
And
I know, but
and
still,
at some point they may, but
it's still a problem, isn't it, with the FAA?
They keep them down low, and they're supposed to be below 400 feet.
I see.
They haven't been an issue for us. Probably for the first year, I did think about seeing spotters down on the ground. I did think about wonder if anybody's flying something right now, but it's not. It's compared to all the other stuff that's going on up there. It's not a.
The least dangerous.
You don't care.
Yeah,
not a big deal.
So I think the drones have a place. Back to how we do it. It's just a collaborative effort where we have several conversations. 3 or 4. Now we know 3 or 4 days out. People say, "How do you know?" Well, I can tell you on Tuesday if there's going to be a chance for severe weather Thursday or Friday.
Weather forecasting has gotten a lot better over the last 30 years, regardless of what people tell you.
Oh yeah, and I mean, look at how narrow an area can be pinpointed now for this to happen.
It's almost like, okay, tonight at 6:00 we'll be having a showing of a tornado, so everybody show up quick.
Just about.
I mean, it's almost that. I mean, if you look at the HR, which I call the her. Because I hate it.
Yeah.
Oh, it drives me nuts. It's more fickle than a woman, and I'm a very fickle woman. And
we'll let her say that.
Hey, I own it.
In the interest of PC.
Well,
that's why they call it the her.
Well, the her's a bigger bitch than I am. I'll tell you that. I'll say it. So, because when it doesn't work out, I'm like, lady.
Yeah, it's And so having everybody contribute their, and they will ask me, where do you think you ought to stage?
Right.
And
so they do ask your opinion and you get some input.
Yeah. And they know that, hopefully everybody knows I am not a meteorologist.
Well, I'll tell you what, I'd consider you an underground meteorologist.
Yeah. I don't know what I would be. What would I be? Kind of a Holiday Inn Express kind of guy.
But I consider me as a underground severe weather met. Because
there you go.
And that's it.
Well, because you're out there in the elements. You get to feel those atmospheric changes. You get to feel it at altitude, and you get a visual.
And you've been into this your whole life.
Only radar really gets.
Yeah.
You have an area of expertise from just observing the storms from the air like that. And so you do have a very specific area of expertise that
and an interest, it's obvious.
An observer. I mean, that's what I've always been. I've always been a curious guy. I think that's what helps me in breaking news deals when I'm looking down there and thinking, well, I'd want to know what that is down there that's burning. So
let's go zoom in on that
and that angle.
Did you have much inspiration from John Wagner coming into what you were doing?
John actually worked for me for a while when I had an Airborne Traffic Network. He was John Wagner was a traffic reporter here for years and years, and he was Sky Spy, legendary. Yes. 610 WDAF country station.
Sky Spy.
And John was convinced that nobody listened to anybody do traffic but him, and it was almost right. I mean, they had great ratings.
Absolutely.
But he's one of those guys. You in the blue car, bend and curve, move over.
Yeah. Oh,
you're in a fast lane.
Call you out in a second.
And I'm pretty sure he was making all of it up, but he was a character. He was brilliant at what he did. And he was a news guy who ended up doing traffic, and I don't know where he is now. He hasn't been around for quite a while, but he was.
I just remember Dan Henry from the day.
From inspiration, yeah. I mean, just to he made it. He made his traffic reports into an event,
right?
And so you couldn't help but listen.
Sure.
So
you get him over the Grandview Triangle during rush hour. I mean, it was just comedic gold.
yeah, I never quite got to the point that he did. I didn't quite have the whatever it took to be as outlandish as he could be.
He was in a chopper, right? He wasn't in a.
No, he was in a plane. He was in. I don't think he was ever in a helicopter. Steve Untriff was in a helicopter for a while. Cliff Wink on KMBC radio, KMBC back then, affiliated with Chinline. Mm-hmm. But John flew a Piper Arrow for a while, flew a Cessna 152. Actually, when he moved down to the Virgin Islands, he retired and he bought a bar in the Virgin Islands.
Good for him.
And
now that's the way to retire.
Well, it didn't work out too well, unfortunately.
Well, or not.
They were he got down there and. As I guess happens a lot, they make you think they want you to come down there, and then to stay open, you're going to have to grease some palms, and he wasn't doing that. So every other day he was closed, from what I understand. But when he left to do that, I applied for his job because I just thought it would be so cool combining broadcasting and flying, and And so, yeah, I didn't get it. But
Wonder if back then he was like, these helicopter guys. Yeah.
well, I was
Get
actually
off my lawn mentality.
actually I was flying airplanes back then too. Most of my time's in airplanes. So,
Gotcha.
so I could.
So what's you
relate
like better, planes or copter?
I tell people it's like if you have two kids, you love them the both the same amount, but in different ways.
Right.
Gotcha.
And so airplanes are great from point A to point B. I love them. They're fast. They're transportation. Helicopters are sexy. They're just, you can levitate.
You can maneuver a lot more.
You really, helicopters, it's almost more like it's just coming through you. They're so sensitive that I can actually have you in the helicopter. I can make a left turn and you'll never see my hand move. It's that sense. Yeah. I mean, and that's what's really cool about them. So you can finesse them to death. And then it's just kind of almost like your energy just flowing out of them or into the controls, and the helicopter becomes, just sounding really, really creepy. The helicopter kind of becomes part of you. And so I think that I actually don't consider it a machine that I'm flying. I consider that I am flying. And that is my vehicle. If that makes any sense.
No, that makes a lot of sense.
My vessel.
Yeah.
So
it's no different than driving a car.
What do you fly now?
we fly a Robinson R44. It's not as big as the Jet Ranger, not as robust. It weighs about 1,000 pounds less, but it's perfect for what we do.
Sure. Easy on the fuel.
Yeah, easy on it. It's Jet Rangers are great helicopters, but they are much more expensive to operate.
Sure.
And these are comparable. Again, not quite as robust, but for news reporting and the stuff that we do, storm chasing, although sometimes I miss that extra 1,000 pounds.
I was wondering about that.
But it's perfect for that. And you have to know its limitations.
Sure.
You have to know limitations of everything.
Right. But you got to test those limitations first.
Yeah.
Figure out what they really are to your ability.
I'll let the test pilots do that.
Yeah, there you go.
One of these days I'd like to roll with you, but please don't do it on that day.
Okay, yeah.
Because I'll be like this.
Let's we'll test the envelope here. So
I'll be like this. Shauna, look. Yep, got it.
yeah,
And yet I'll outrun an F5, no problem, on the ground.
yeah. That's because I'm sure you guys have seen the video
Have
that
you
somebody
chased
made.
on the ground?
No, never.
Why not?
Well, I did one time. Trying to remember, it was gosh, I don't know what the deal was. I think it was night, and I took my wife at the time and my son, and we went. There was something coming through Lawrence, and we got into some really high wind. What am I thinking? Stick to what you know.
With the kid in the car.
Did it feel
Wife
different?
freaking out.
Did it feel different in the car than it does up in the helicopter?
I felt totally handicapped because I couldn't see what was going on.
Really?
Yeah, and
Interesting.
because I'm the whole time I'm flying, I'm looking at it, and it's kind of like
a whole different perspective.
yeah, I spend a lot of time looking for things that I might not see
Okay.
beyond the obvious.
Are you talking about like the tops of the clouds
I'm
then
looking
or the whole thing?
When I was doing the Dearborn thing, I was so focused on that storm that and Brian was talking to me, and I saw on the radar, but there was another storm developing behind us. That's before we had radar in there. It wasn't a dangerous situation or anything like that, but you have to watch your back. Number one, the underlying most important thing of all storm chasing in a helicopter is leave yourself an out. And never,
Same on the ground.
Yeah,
I was
never.
gonna say it sounds just like car chasing.
And don't, and don't ever assume, as we know, that you're just punching through the core here. You're going to get out on the other side, or hey, I can go here. There's a little break here in the flanking line. There's some precipitation here and here, and I'm going to go through there. We may do that, but I'm not going to be flying at 120 miles an hour. I'll be 20, 30 miles an hour and angling in. So if I need to make that, if it gets bumpy and I need to make that turn, I will.
And get the heck out of
But
there.
it's just be sure that you don't miss anything. And because that's what will come up and bite you.
You got to know your target and what's beyond
Well, at
it,
least
I
you don't
guess.
have to deal with a bunch of other copters in your way.
Yeah, and you know
Yeah,
that's
not LA.
That's an advantage.
No, like chasing in general.
Yeah.
Well,
at least
that
you don't
too.
have an 81 Highway 81 situation.
And
where,
LA would be the chaser convergence, I would imagine, helicopter-wise.
Oh,
'cause
my
you've got
gosh.
police,
Oh,
you've
well,
got
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
how many media
yeah,
stations.
when
And
I
then-
go to LA to see my best friend, it's like
and
all
then
the
having to
time.
dodge the sharks. When they're coming out of the sky.
Well, and then you got the LA pilots that are out there, and they've got like live road tracking. Built
Isn't
into
that
their-
unbelievable?
And, I mean, you see that on the live streams, and you're just like, whoa! Like you can see on a street level basis where that pilot is.
Yeah, they're interfacing now on the video, not unlike you see the first down marker on an NFL game.
Right.
And no matter where the camera's moving, that first down marker stays there on the field.
It's there, right.
Well, now they've got that interfaced overlaid
Right.
on that picture, the name of the streets that you're looking at, just almost like you're looking at a GPS map overlaying the video. So I have no idea how they do that, but that's some pretty
Wow, I
impressive
feel
stuff.
old. I mean, because I don't have a clue either how they would do
Yeah,
that.
that just really came on the
That's
scene in
amazing.
the last like year or so, right?
Right. And from a chasing standpoint, imagine
Oh, that'd be huge.
for
I wouldn't buy a copter from Elon Musk.
Because I mean,
right
it's
now.
just not. It's just not.
because
You know,
turns
the
out
locals.
those windows are not.
yeah, you better
Because I mean that mean your footage means something to everybody. I think overall, but the locals are going to really know if you're over their area.
Exactly.
You know, and if you can convey exactly on a street level without having to take that guesswork into yourself as a pilot, that's a powerful tool.
Oh, absolutely. Especially if you're zooming in from 5 miles away.
Right.
And you can tell, because we've got this great zoom capability. The station, I think, very frequently gets calls of, get him out of the sky. It's dangerous. He's too close.
You can say you're over, 75th and Antioch, and everybody knows where that is.
Right.
But if you're
Exactly.
at like 300 Road and 57, nobody has a clue where you're at.
And that's one thing I've always had with, and I have no research to back this up, but I know that the National Weather Service, on a lot of the warnings and things, they talk about counties. And I will tell you right now, doing this for as long as I have, I don't know what counties are what.
Counties are big.
Yeah.
That's what I teach in awareness.
Yeah.
Know the county you're in and the ones around you,
Right, because
especially on
that's
the
how they're
west.
reporting it. I think
Right.
if it was,
And a
I
lot
know
of
what
people
cities are
don't
near
know.
me.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Well, there's this whole thing I read lately about. It was a branding thing, and ironically had to do with domain names. It was basically talking about how Blu-ray was the format that was successful versus HD DVD.
Right.
And the thing was because Blu-ray rolls off your tongue and is kind of it's a blue light, and you can say that in everyday conversation.
Right.
Not too many people say, "Hey, what did you watch on the HD DVD today?"
Yeah.
And so
Nobody's
it's
gonna say that.
it's the same. Yeah, exactly. It's the same thing. In my opinion, we should be talking about, and we do it at our station. I know they do both. They talk about. I know Brian really emphasizes, because we were talking about Linwood specifically.
Sure.
But I think that it's not common enough knowledge to know where the counties are, so that people can react properly.
Well, heck,
Yeah,
go ahead.
I was just going to say, I save a lot of warnings when I'm doing some of my research just for reference when they issued the warning and where. But I noticed that the Weather Service, I think, increasingly is trying to list towns, and sometimes you get a long list of 15, 20 towns or something. And I think they're trying to relate people to, okay, here's the town that needs to be really
and
watched for.
Yeah, and I think now they're also including how many people are affected. Like in this area, this severe risk or whatever could. The watch. I think when they issue a watch now, don't they put in there what the?
I still have problems getting people to
Population.
understand the difference between a watch and a warning. They still don't know, a lot of people, because they say they both start with a W.
And they are close. I mean,
And it's but then again, I guess maybe it's because I'm a weather person, but to me it seems very elementary and easy to understand the difference. But it's just, if I just forget that people actually don't give a crap about the weather. They just want to know,
Till it really
is
Some
it going to
people.
storm?
Yeah.
Is it going to be sunny for my wedding? Is it going to be this? Is it going to be that? And that's it.
that's why I would
That's
not
all
want
they
to be
care about.
a TV meteorologist. All the way from Katie to Nick and everybody else.
That's why you're so important.
Well, I think that I have the luxury, albeit in a tragic sort of way, with what I deal with in tracking them when I find one,
Right.
Of dealing with mostly relevant material. They can take me and I can say I don't see anything, but that's all I'm saying. But I deal more in absolutes and very little conjecture.
Right.
Except for May 28th when I was.
Well, yeah, there's times I've noticed that if you're not sure, Brian will look at your footage and either verify it or say no.
And that's what's so cool. I mean, we
I know.
we actually.
That's really, I mean.
Bounce it right off of each other.
Yeah,
you were gonna say, John?
exactly.
Well, I was going to say one thing I like about you is if you don't understand quite what's going on, you won't pretend that you do, and you'll
Right.
indicate.
And you'll
this
actually
is
ask
this is a
Brian.
little odd. I'm trying to get a little bit of a handle on it, so
Yeah.
let's keep watching it.
Yeah,
You know,
and
that's good.
And I love the
I appreciate that.
conversation you and Brian and Katie have all back and forth with each other. It's like, okay, well, hey Johnny, why don't you roll over here and let's look at this lowering that we got going on, because this looks like it's getting occluded. This one looks like it's starting to form. Or you'll notice it and you'll ask Brian, I've heard you do that. And Brian will like, yeah, do it. Or no, let's stay on this.
You know,
Yeah, I love the communication you all have.
And ironically, we established that and developed that on a very, very deep level by co-hosting the Jerry Lewis Telethon for years and years together.
Yeah, I
And
know.
so
I went one year.
We have this.
Yeah.
We
The Weston.
Yeah, it was at the West. And so that is when you're going back and forth, and that's another very meaningful thing. So, I mean, Brian has a heart of gold. He's
a doll.
I love him to death, and for people who don't know him.
Oh, he's why we're together.
Oh, really? Well,
He has everything to do with it.
I'm sorry, John.
I know.
Yeah, I'll talk to Brian about
Yeah,
that.
I know. I need to send him a fruit basket or something.
Yeah, he
Or a 12-pack of beer or something. I don't know, or whatever he wants.
and he's incredibly funny. I mean, he's kind of funny on air, but he's just
He's got a
Ooh.
great sense of humor.
But so we established this bond. I don't know what you would call it.
It's like a family.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's like you trust each other, and it's almost like there's times where it's like you're reading each other's minds.
Well, and then
You
Kate,
barely have to
and you know, Nick's great in that regard too. Katie walks
Katie
in
fits
as far
right
as
Right.
and you know, Katie coming back into she is just so relatable and so talented.
Right.
I wish more people knew what a scientist she is. I come to all these pieces, but back to the conversation part of it with Brian and I have that, then and all these other communicators who have fallen into place. Pete's unbelievable too.
Pete's a doll.
And it's that conversation, not preaching, not
Right.
overstating. You know, it's such a
Over-dramatizing.
Kind of
You're-
sensationalize it
yeah, and
Right.
that's
too much. You got to get people's attention, but I think
Just
you can
the
get that
facts.
attention with your video and let that speak for itself.
No overhyping,
Right.
no underhyping, just the
and
facts.
boy, you talk about a fine line. That is,
It's hard.
really hard.
Broadcasting big time.
And you know, it's
But then if you do it that way, then when it's really bad, people will listen more.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well-
Especially with your video and then Brian's stern language.
Mm-hmm.
It's a perfect combination to get people to take cover.
he can be so focused, and people don't realize how much is going on in his head
Right.
with all the people talking to him and what he's going back and forth. And if you notice, we don't in our coverage there isn't anything that would be slick about it. Okay, it is again more of a conversation. Brian will go, no, what? Okay, all right, you got Johnny. Okay, Johnny.
Right.
And the information is the authentic presentation of the information is much more important than the perception as far as is it good TV. And that's where I come back to with everything in my life, anything purpose driven, you can't go wrong. And so
Right.
we put collectively with
I like
everybody
that.
on that team, purpose behind what we're doing. We're trying to help people stay safe.
Right.
Sure. Well, and you
And-
guys do it in what works well for you and what's been tested and proven, not necessarily what the consultants might say when they come in to review things, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, you've been doing it for so long, and you guys, all but wrote the manuals for this stuff.
And I haven't watched any of the other stations to know what they do, and I'm sure they do a great job. And I'm sure that everybody has the same purpose.
Sure.
Yes, they do. I know. On May 28th, we were watching Channel 4 some too, kind of flipping back and forth. But I think everybody does a good job. But you guys do a really good.
Yeah,
job.
it's
When we saw when it hit Linwood, and we could tell it was a perfect
the power flashes and
the perfectly shaped HP, and it was huge. I looked at him and it was like, I can't believe we actually have to take cover.
Well,
I'm an storm chaser.
and see, and you guys knowing what your heritage with all of this from on a national level, that says a lot. That you recognized it was
Oh
a
yeah,
dangerous
we knew this
situation.
was deadly. I
Yeah.
mean, once it really formed up and you were hitting it at Linwood, I could tell by your voice too. I noticed that your voice changes.
I heard that a lot.
That if you were like, yeah, I'm not so sure, to where, okay, here we go. This is serious.
Well, I kept
I
saying
noticed
it's
that with
the
you.
real deal. You know, you
And
guys.
I wondered,
there's a
I was
tornado
going to
on the
ask
ground.
you,
It's in there.
is that
Exactly.
from your years of being a radio DJ, or is that just natural? Which I'm just,
I don't know. I think I
but you're not overly. You're just like, hey, all right, this is what
another-
I'm seeing.
Another corny statement. I try and do it. I try and get out of my head and into my heart.
That's perfect.
And because we have to, when we're talking, you have to listen to what you're saying. So if you say something wrong, you realize it and you can correct yourself. So there's always this self-monitoring going on. And if you're not careful, for me, I don't know how it is for anybody else, but if you're not careful, if I'm not careful, I can hear myself just talking instead of communicating.
Okay.
And so if you get it down to, I care about all those people who are on the ground. I
Right.
mean, my God, I'm
There
I'm
you go.
flying over Linwood,
Yeah.
and I know, oh my God. I mean, this isn't just like a little windstorm coming through. This
This
could
is a
kill
big
you.
deal.
And to know that you're, and I know I used the word sobering before, but it really is when you think about, knowing what they're going to go through in a few minutes, and there's nothing you can do about it.
Sure.
Right.
Well, and then
And
you've got the mental part too, where this could be affecting somebody that I know and love.
Sure.
I mean, that's got to cross your mind.
Yeah. I mean, and I've been in situations, I've seen car wrecks before, and thought I've recognized a vehicle and somebody who would have been there at a given time. And it, there's great pause involved with that.
Sure.
Oh, sure.
So there's, and I think part of the problem with the impression of storm chasing now, and we really don't call it that on the air just because of, and you guys know better than anybody what
Right.
they
We've
did with some of the
self-comment.
reality stuff,
Yeah.
and then it became all scripted. I don't know if that happened to you guys, but
A little bit.
so yeah, so there's some faux, not drama necessarily, but just keeping in mind what you can accomplish by appropriately and properly reporting this stuff.
Right.
Then it's like I don't know, adrenaline. I don't know what
It is
It's like the
adrenaline.
greatest drug in the
And
world.
like you said, spiritual. And that's how John and I feel about it. And we don't really tell people anymore that we're storm chasers. We talk more about, he does research and I do awareness, like talks at schools.
Mm-hmm.
Like I know you do a lot of talks at schools, so do I. And other places. And, I try to do projects like this.
And that's so important.
And talk about awareness.
That's so important.
So he studies the forecasting. I study people. I've even taken sociology classes of why people pay attention, why people don't, and the aftermath. That's more my interest.
Mm-hmm.
I'm more of
So-
a storm smut peddler.
Yeah, you are.
I love it. I'm going to use that later.
You're the what's the Hustler guy of Storm? You do a lot of weather porn.
Oh, there you go. But that,
But and then I say, and we chase storms.
well,
I put
and
that on the end.
I applaud you for the aftermath part of it, and I mean, from teaming up with both of you, and
you.
And I do want to talk to you guys when we're done about
definitely
this cool STEM
We'll talk
program that I'm working with too, the TriStar group, which is promoting STEM science, for
Absolutely. Anything
some
you need.
underprivileged kids, and getting girls involved in it more.
You had me at girls involved.
So
Because there's not enough.
so just an opportunity thing, but
I think that's fabulous.
But that's in what you're
But
talking about. The aftermath is
I just
huge.
talk to people now instead of saying, "Oh, we're storm chasers and we do this." I say, "This is what we do." Oh, and we storm chase. Mm-hmm. I say that as an aftermath because it's been, pardon my language, bastardized. Too much,
that's great.
And it's
great
almost it's almost embarrassing.
Well,
to
when
say.
you lead with that, people's mind goes to their
Right.
preconception. If you lead with what you
I
really do and
don't
then
wanna
follow
hear the
it
hell
with
on
that,
that thing.
that kind of breaks that barrier down for people to understand what really goes on behind the scenes.
And then people are like, "Oh, you're married, so is it like Twister?" Yeah. It's just like, if I don't ever have to answer that question again, it'll be too soon.
My
You know
gosh!
what I mean?
So sorry. But the cool part that you were talking about, I just think that the combination of being able to educate people, and if you listen to Brian when we're doing our broadcasts, we're trying to explain to people.
And you do it in layman's terms too.
Yeah, that's all I know.
But that's good. I don't like
very
it.
good.
I don't like it like on national news networks.
Mm-hmm.
They go too technical, I think, for the everyday person. And it's like, no one's going to understand what they mean by dew points and by this and this. Go slow. Just basically say what's going on in the most layman terms possible. Don't try to be all Mr. Bill Nye the Science Guy.
No.
You know
I don't
what
think you
mean?
need to throw science. I think you need to probably throw more of what the threat to
Yeah,
public
that's all they
property is
care
gonna be.
about. And if anybody's more into it, then A, they already know about it, or B, they'll look it up. That's what I like about you and Brian. You're very just to the point. You say what people will understand, and that's all they need to know.
And it's interesting you were talking about what makes people react or do what they're going to do. And I think that is, again, I have the benefit of being able to show pictures that do that for me.
Right.
It's hard to argue with seeing a tornado on the ground at any given time and say, that's a mile from my house, I don't care. It's like, oh my God, run!
Right?
That's when I was in junior high school, is when the Overland Park tornado touched down at Catherine Carpenter School.
Yeah, they're in Overland Park, right?
Yeah. And we found out it was a real high-based wall cloud.
Right.
So you could see it from the entire city.
The sirens on that thing didn't go off until like a minute after it was done.
Yeah, I guess so. All I know is we found out about it because all of a sudden kids are running up and down the hallway screaming because there was a math teacher apparently, and she's facing southwest, and she looked out the window and she sees this thing and looks at her class and sees this thing. She goes, "Run, people, run!" I was told that. I have no idea if it's a true story.
That was the indoor warning system.
Yeah. Run, people, run!
I think that's when they were kind of mandated to have a weather radio or some type of warning system piped into an intercom system.
Yeah.
The school had one at
Everything,
that time.
everything was over the intercom.
You got to keep in mind they didn't even have air conditioning in buildings really back then.
Nope.
No, it was basically the same thing. If there was a nuke or a tornado, just get under your desk and put
You
your
heard
hands
the
over.
outdoor warning sirens go off. That was your cue.
I think
that was
I
it.
don't know if that was the one. No, because the other one was, and I can't remember what year this was, but I remember it so vividly. It was in January of 66, maybe.
Topeka?
No, this was Oric. There was a tornado that hit Oric, Missouri, and there was a fatality at the high school. And
I didn't know
it
that
was in January, and in a 48-hour period, we had just about every possible kind of precipitation and weather event you could have within a 50-mile radius.
That sounds like a cold core.
Well, it started.
Well, I imagine it was just a large low pressure area, kind of like what we have coming up today.
Yeah.
But, it must have come across just right to pull up enough moisture in January to do something just east of the city here, and then on the backside of it, I'm sure you got some snow or
it went from
precipitation.
thunderstorms, rain, hail, and a tornado to rain, to freezing rain, to sleet, to snow. Yep. To a blizzard. I mean, the winds were like out of sight. I'm leaving something else out that I know happened. Anyway, but so
lightning, thunder.
Yeah, wind. I mean, it was everything you could imagine in a 48-hour period. So
the whole year in one day.
Exactly, exactly, and a tornado too.
And a tornado to boot.
So
that's what I love about this area. This
interesting.
You can get
the Super Bowl of weather.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Perfect. Very perfect.
And
I wish I had been
that's
flying a helicopter.
why I pay attention to cold cores or pretty big 700
Well,
millibar lows.
we won't get
that
too
come
technical,
through.
but sometimes when you get these big upper lows that come across, they can produce tornadoes and snow
Over here in
pretty close to
Kansas
each
City.
other, like within 70 miles of each other or something. That's pretty
Yeah.
nasty.
So, John, do you think we're ever going to get to the point where it can be almost predictable from a precision standpoint, or is it always going to be a little bit of a gunshot? And I mean, it's much more of a rifle shot now.
I'm kind of a old school kind of guy, and I've really seen it improve, particularly over the last 30 years, and in particularly even in the last 15 years. But I think there's a point at which you're not going to be able to get too much more precise. We do have these models now that it produces a radar output, which is a forecast, 6-8 hours ahead of time, and it looks just like a real radar. And sometimes those are remarkably accurate, but there's other times they're not that accurate. So there's going to be certain situations where, if we had exact observations everywhere, or a mile apart or something, and you could feed them all into a big computer, maybe you could get more precise. But I don't see it getting a lot more precise than what it is. I just think maybe the technology might help us with some of the warning, like you were mentioning, where they can superimpose streets on an image. Mm-hmm. If we could get to that, with warnings and TV weather coverage out here,
I agree.
I think those things would help as much as anything. So that's my thought.
Yeah, I think if the warnings could be better and the watches and get people to understand them better, it doesn't really matter. And there's days where I wonder, it's like, okay, are we having more tornadoes or is there more population?
That and look at the push notifications that can go out over cell phones.
Yeah, we've got more eyes.
Yeah, more.
Yeah,
Yeah.
That's a very good
And some
good point.
NWS stations are a little bit quicker to push that than others.
It can vary depending on where they are and who's
So,
running things. But I think a really good point you just made is one of the big things I've seen with warnings now is they push them out on cell phones. Everybody's got a cell phone. And so if you're in a certain area, you'll get that warning. And I think that's great. Mm-hmm. And I think that can save a lot of lives.
I think utilizing, we now have the ability to reach individuals anytime. They don't have to be watching TV. They don't.
I disagree.
Really?
Mm-hmm. I think it might overwarn a little bit.
Well, that's the danger.
I think it, just like the sirens and everything. If you're getting something, if you're in an area where they're like button happy, then they're going to stop paying attention to it. Just like everything else, it needs to be precise, and we need to bring down the false warnings.
I think the criteria probably is like coming to more regional, kind of like we talked about with Joe a few weeks ago.
Right.
I agree. Conditional to what.
Conditional to what the region will do.
Very good.
Like this time of year, you might want to look more towards the Gulf states.
Sure.
And depending, like we're pretty hot around May, around this area. Of course, it could be any time. But what was the tornado? Who'd you say that said it was all TV that they got the warnings from?
Well, this was James talking about Andy Bailey.
I think that came from Andy Bailey.
At the
Andy
Kansas
Bailey
City Weather
said,
Service.
was that through Joe?
You mentioned it to Joe.
Yeah,
Joe Loria when he
that
was
the May
on.
28th was
heard
all
that
through
too.
TV. Now, and a good example that I try to prove to people is you look at the Topeka 66, 16 people died. And that was an EF5, or an F5 at the time. And although it was visible, but at that time, Topeka was about the same size as Joplin. Now, Joplin was rain-wrapped, but they both hit around the same time. They were both EF5 fives. Why did 132 people die in 2011?
Yeah. Actually, it was close to 160 that died in Joplin.
That was 162, but whatever.
Yeah.
It's semantics. Anyways, all right, over 160 people.
Yeah, triple digits is the big.
Triple digits.
And wasn't the
but
big...
yet, in 1966, only 16 people died. Now, I know, looking back and reading Bonner Menninger's book, a lot of people were, we had 3 TV stations. The cops were going up and down the streets, and it was visible. But I'm kind of wondering if we're getting a little too oversaturated with information.
Yeah, and
what are your thoughts on that?
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, but in Joplin, most of the houses did not have basements, correct?
No, they did not.
And in Topeka, I think they did.
Yes, they
so
did.
that might have had a big part,
Yes,
obviously,
you're right.
if you can't get underground.
I would agree.
There's a lot of factors involved there.
Yeah,
Sure.
yeah.
Yeah.
But it
didn't seem like people were paying attention to Joplin Day, to me.
Again, I
It was at 2% that day.
it was what?
No, it was higher than that.
No, it was higher than that.
I
The
did- I did
EHI
a
was off
paper-
the map.
I did a paper on that. I think it was at 10%.
Oh, okay.
And the EHI was, whew,
10% chance
day.
of tornadoes. But yeah,
And how long ago was that? How many years?
that was
2011.
2011.
Okay, so almost 10 years ago.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
look at where I don't think there were any push notifications going out on cell phones.
No,
back then.
I don't think there were
Very few.
back then.
Yeah,
And
that's true.
I do think that
Good point.
there's so
Good
many
point.
platforms people can get the warnings from. You can look at it like there's too many. So do they have to monitor all these things? But since most people have cell phones, I do think the push thing is in the final analysis probably a big
wish
improvement.
there was more training on when to push the button and
Right.
and the wording. I mean, there's still a lot of work to be done, and just like any other science, like medical or any other, there's always improvements. There's always ways to improve and make it better.
Well, if they could, I think the next step, in my opinion, would be get it, start trying to make it more and more of a rifle shot. There's a lot of broad-based warning kind of criteria out there.
Yep.
Where, Northeast, whatever county or whatever. And it's got to be out there somewhere, potentially, that where somebody is when there's, cell phone, they have their cell phone. I mean, precisely where they are. So if I'm in Grandview and this thing's happening over here, I'm not going to get a notification because it's not headed anywhere near me. But I think pretty much the entire city was under a tornado warning, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe not. But if it could get, I think the more and more you narrow that corridor with known things, certainly can't do it with a tornado that could produce a tornado. I mean, a thunderstorm that could produce a tornado. But yeah, imagine if in that 2 or 3 mile wide area where a tornado is, because I had people who told me they were in, South Overland Park where I live, and they were in their basement. I'm thinking, it wasn't really anywhere near you.
Right.
You talked about
Well,
May
yeah.
28th?
Yeah, May 28th, yeah.
Well,
Okay,
same
yeah.
here.
That's interesting.
I mean, we had the sirens go off here too, and then it kind of ramped back up once it started going towards Excelsior.
Mm-hmm.
But at that point, they put the warnings back out, but it was for all of Clay County. So everybody here, my mother, who is in a nursing home with dementia, called me like, "What do we do?"
Yeah.
And I was like, "No, Mom, we're fine."
And a lot of that depends on local systems too. I think there's some improvements that
There's
could be made there where
lot of work.
where some counties are set up so that when they activate all the sirens, they have to do it for most of the county or a certain
just
section
have
of the
to.
county.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I've been through several of them here where they've run the sirens here, and I'm going, why are they running them here?
Yeah,
Because it's
I'd
well-laced
like to
us.
see more work done.
And so there's more. There's a lot of areas that could improve on. And so I think you've made a good point, John.
Yeah.
On that.
And you wonder if the sirens are now, what's the word I'm looking for, obsolete almost. I mean, I
Right.
understand how they can, but if now you have this push notification stuff, and maybe you look at the sirens as this broad, hey, there's an alert, and then you push and say you're right in it. But
Good point. Very good point. Because sirens are not intended to warn people
Inside.
indoors.
That is a
anyhow.
really good idea. We'll we need to talk about that.
And you got to be kind of careful with that too, though, because I mean, just like with NOAA weather radio, you know, if there's a storm out there in the middle of nowhere, Kansas, where you've got one tower servicing, you know, a 50-mile radius, and that one tower is compromised, you've got several towns that don't have push notifications to their phone all of a sudden.
Mm-hmm. Oh, gotcha. Okay, yeah.
Well, I think it would be a good thing, like you said, the sirens aren't exactly obsolete, but maybe that could be kind of more like a background or backup system of sorts.
Well, they're technically for being outside anyway. So, I mean, like if you're at a park or something.
That's one thing I think broadcasting's really unveiled about the weather world is that, you know, you've got all these different cogs that come in together as one big picture. You've got the NWS and NWS chat with your meteorologist behind the scenes. You got your people in vehicles. You got your chopper pilots. You got all this different technology and equipment and all these amazing, capable human beings coming together to make it all work.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
For the purpose of helping people.
Absolutely.
Exactly. And getting people to pay attention. And plus, you know, with my DVD that's now on YouTube, Surviving the Storm, I'm not saying, hey, look, I just give them tips to save themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Whether you choose to take this advice or not is on you.
Mm-hmm.
But here's some really good advice. And if you take it, your odds are going to improve. It's just like when a doctor gives you advice about your health.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like you could take it or not. And then it's up to you to find out what
Ultimately,
happens.
it's going to
Right?
be an individual choice.
Yeah, but it makes me sick when children, you know, because they don't really have that choice, you know.
And when we talk to the schools, one thing that
that
I
kids are
emphasize,
awesome, aren't they?
and how we hang our hat on what we're presenting is, now we're not here to scare you. We're going to show you some tornadoes. We're not here to scare you, but as you probably heard, knowledge is power.
Uh-huh.
And the more you see a tornado and you understand what it is, the less scared you're going to be of it. And so with that, it's basically.
But they love the science of it.
They do. And just to be able to capture their attention and go home and teach their parents some things.
That's what I tell when we've done it. I'm like, now tell your parents if it's lightning outside and mom or dad says, hey, it's time to take a shower or bath. Can't.
Yeah.
Because the lightning could go through the pipes and you could be electrocuted. So you get to tell your parents, I can't right now because Shauna Davies said
Right.
it's too dangerous.
And
So just little things like that. So it's not scary and it's more fun. Like, haha, mom, you know.
Well, yeah, I tell them that about don't let your parents think they can hide under a bridge for a tornado. So,
Yes.
because everybody saw that
Yes,
video.
yes.
So it used to be 15 years ago. That was more. A lot of the kids had seen it then, but it's fertile territory, and you really. I talk to them, and the whole team talks to them on a level that they can take some of it back to mom and dad too. So.
Oh yeah, that's I tell them, tell your parents, go home and tell your parents this. I did a few with Pete back in the day.
Oh really?
Oh yeah.
Oh cool.
Yeah, he's so good.
Yeah.
He did the technical stuff and I did the layman.
Oh, did he?
Yeah, because that's just how we roll.
And he knows that stuff. He's so smooth, and
he do his stuff, and I'm like, who's seen Twister?
yeah, exactly.
Sorry.
I don't know how many times I've watched that movie. And here's an interesting tidbit for you. When you watch the opening shot where they're driving down the road and they come in over the field and everything, if you look right when you can see Bill Paxton talking, if you look in the reflection of the door, you can see the reflection of a jet ranger. Have you seen that?
Yes. I noticed it.
Oh, I had no idea.
I have.
No, I'll look for that.
Oh, yeah, it's really
I showed
cool.
it to you.
You can see the
I was
rotor.
like, you can see
you
that.
can see the
you can
rotor
see the helicopter
moving, and it's pretty cool.
That's interesting. Yeah, I was just
Yeah.
at the Wakita Museum, the Twister Museum in
Oh,
Wakita
no
this
kidding.
past May. On my way back.
I didn't even know there was one.
Oh, you got them. It's a destination.
Yeah, we've been
You
there.
have to go there. It's a fantastic place. The woman that runs the place is just a complete gem, and there's just so much memorabilia. The water tower still stands, and the story behind how they came into the town after it was hit by that storm and said, hey, we'll help you guys clean up. We know you don't really have the funds to do your own cleanup, so
We're gonna
we'll film this
demolish
movie
it some
here.
more, but-
We'll demolish it some more, shoot our film. And
I didn't know that's how they chose that.
Yeah, the production company did a lot of work, a lot of good things for that town.
So they shot the front part of it after they repaired the city.
Yeah, the city had
shot the
already been
damage first.
destroyed by an actual storm, but they
man.
didn't have the means to clean it up. And the production company said this would be perfect for what we're doing.
There's some great helicopter shots in that.
I'll have to look for that. I didn't realize that.
He was there on the
Easter egg.
the Hail Day, wasn't it?
I don't remember which day you're talking about there.
The day you went to the trailer, Vince Miller was the
Oh, you mean when they were shooting Twister? Yeah. Actually, I wasn't in Wakita. They were shooting some stuff southeast of Ponca City somewhere.
Oh, that was the scene where they're going up the hill and there's the hail.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
and
they
the
were
tornado
shooting
touch.
that.
He was there that day.
From a
got to-
distance.
got to
I
see
knew
the-
a fellow that was the consultant
kidding.
on that. So I went out one day. It
But
was
he got
kinda
to see
interesting.
the ice chunks, is what they called it.
Yeah,
'Cause
well,
they couldn't
yeah,
get any
They're
hail.
using an ice machine,
They
basically.
could not find real hail.
I remember they
real-looking hail.
were like triangular or something,
yeah.
weren't they? I mean,
it
Yeah,
was
but-
basically ice chunks that you get like at
Yeah.
Quick Trip,
Out of your
you know?
refrigerator or something.
oh, that is hilarious. What a great movie. And what, I mean, there's so many lines in there. And the one that I really enjoy and I kind of apply to what we do at Channel 9 is, what is it? Was it Jonah or Jonas?
Jonas.
Jonas.
Yeah.
He says he's got all the fancy equipment, but he's got no instinct.
Yeah.
And you know, when push comes to shove,
It's all about instinct.
Like Brian telling me, don't get off that one storm, stay on that Lawrence
Mm-hmm.
storm.
Yep.
And Katie saying, I see this thing winding up 10 miles, you know,
You
I
gotta
need you
listen
10
to it.
miles north now. You
Speaks
know,
volumes.
Don't make Miss Warner mad.
Yep. That's what makes
so-
me frustrated with a lot of storm chasers nowadays. Their head is so buried in the computer. It's like, look at
Outside.
look.
Yeah.
Look here instead of down there, and feel feel the storm. Don't just study it or
Exactly.
just try to get there so you can get the great shot. I mean, you're not really doing it unless you feel it.
And,
you know?
and I think that's where you kind of get behind the power curve, which is an aviation term we use from no matter how much power you add,
Right.
you know, you're not going any faster or you can't save yourself.
That's a
and
really
and
good
the
analogy.
technology thing, it's almost like you are so overloaded with information, you can't possibly process it all into a coherent strategy of where am I going to be, what is this storm going to do, and all that.
Excellent point.
So,
Boy, you sure know your stuff, John.
I just don't think you can remove the human element. I mean, someday maybe when
I'm
AI,
a big believer in that, yeah, humans are going to need to still be a part of the mix to make this work.
and that's where I
Well,
think,
yeah,
and all these notifications we've been talking about, I think you said who's pushing the button,
right.
and you don't know what the published criteria is to answer that question, but certainly that is someone who has to be on a level where it's more than here's what the technology tells me to do. Here's what we really need to pay attention to.
Right.
Bingo.
Yeah. Hopefully it's going to be a long time before that's
Yeah, I
any
know.
different.
Well, we were talking about
hope
that
you're
with
right.
Joe Loria, and we are talking about automation and stuff. And I'm like, yeah, I just saw on the internet one of those self-driving cars going the wrong way on a street. You know, it's like, so I don't think we're anywhere near that. I mean, for
yeah.
weather, because if we can't get these cars to go right, then what they're trying to do, then let's keep the human element in.
Well, they say that, humans, AI eventually will not make the mistakes that humans make. I don't think I'll be around to see that happen, and I'm very happy
I don't really
about that.
want to be around to see that, to be quite honest.
Yeah.
Thing is, there's something to be said about your own clumsiness and what you learn from it. You know, just kind of how you stumbled across how to navigate storms through more or less a mistake or just not knowing, and finding your way through that own clumsiness and developing your own type of ingredients to make that happen is a cool thing.
I think it has a lot to do with knowing how far to go to learn what you need to learn without going too far to get yourself hurt or doing it for the wrong reasons.
You are a genius.
Well, I don't know about
Because
that.
that's how we roll.
Yeah, well, and you're a genius too. But I really
I
do.
rarely hear that from you.
But that's how that's why I emphasize that I've never, in any of the storms I've covered, I've never considered myself anywhere near in a compromising situation.
Good for you.
And that's because because as soon
You want to come home.
yeah, well, and it's not the idea is to be there to do it another day, and so it's total counterintuitive. If you really want to do that, then it is I'm going to do what I need to do to learn from this, or I wouldn't call it. I'm going to venture in this direction, maybe a little bit, and but not to take I'll just chance it and see what happens.
Right. Yeah. Because with flying, there's no chancing it. I mean, you
get
make
one
a
shot.
mistake, that's it. I mean, you have to keep that mindset anytime you go up in the air. This can kill me.
Yeah,
I mean, and whether it's a clear day or not.
Yeah, my son is an airline pilot, and he when he was learning to fly.
Yeah, he used to roll with you, didn't he?
Yeah, well, he was a cameraman on
One of your,
May 4th
son-
and May
yeah.
29th.
I remember you'd say your son was with you.
Yeah, if you look at the May 4th coverage, when we first got it, you'll see there's the tornado, and then the camera drifts a little left, and then it comes back and drifts a little left. And we were watching it afterwards. I said, "What were you doing?" He said, "Dad, I was looking out the window."
Yeah, he was probably so
and he was
mesmerized.
losing the
that-
shot. So
I mean, it's hard. It's kind of like down, even on the ground. I'd be like, and then I'm filming the grass because I'm like looking at it. I'm like, oh,
yeah,
get it back up here.
Squirrel.
Yeah. But anyways, I need to start wrapping this. I just wanted to say a couple of funny things. It's amazing that, I mean, I know we've been friends for a few years and all that, but you're my Mr. Favorite Guy when I was a teenager on Q104.
Super Q plays favorites.
I used to listen to you every day.
Isn't that funny?
And it's like, I never thought that later that Johnny Rowlands would be on my podcast.
Well, and I got started at Q when I was 12.
Yeah.
And
Yes, you were 12.
12 years old. Yeah.
And I was
a
3
child
when I
prodigy.
listened.
Probably. And those were great times. I mean, and I got into radio. I wanted to be an airline
during
pilot.
Frankie and
Yeah.
all those days.
I got-
Frankie was good friends with my sister.
Oh, no kidding.
yeah.
Okay. And she dated one of the guys at Q104, Charlie
Yep.
Becker.
I think everybody dated everybody back in the day.
Yeah. But,
But that's how you got your start. I mean, that's where I first knew of you.
well,
you
see,
know.
and I wanted to be an airline pilot, and I found out when I was 16 that my eyes weren't good enough. You had to have 20/20 uncorrected vision back then to be an airline pilot. So I was like devastated, and I didn't know what I was going to do. And I enrolled at Baker University the last day you could enroll. I almost didn't even go to college, and then got involved with the radio station there. And it's really funny. I tell kids all the time, you may think you have a passion, and when people ask you what's your passion, you don't have to answer that because you may stumble upon one along the way. And broadcasting just happened to become a passion.
Yep.
So, and then it started when I was a jock at Q. In 1977, I got my pilot's license, private pilot's license, and I bought into an airplane with another guy. And during the day, I'd fly around. Salina was one of my favorite places. Just fly out to Salina.
Yeah.
Why? Because I could fly out to Salina, and then do my gig at night. So that was really cool.
Yeah.
And again, I can't believe that. And I also tell these kids when they're talking about careers and stuff, it's basically in this industry at least, evolve or die. And I had somebody tell me one time, you keep reinventing yourself. I said, no, I think I just get closer and closer to who I am,
And who I'm supposed to be.
Yeah, and who I'm supposed to be.
Yeah.
And there's been a ton of divine guidance along the way. So
That's nice.
I'm
That's really prophetic. I like that.
I'm blessed to be doing what I'm doing, and I feel honored to be here among you all. And
Hey, I'm right there with you, buddy. I want to be an actress or a meteorologist.
no kidding.
Mm-hmm.
And here you are.
And here I am.
And you did both.
I don't know. Yeah, kind of. but I found my way to do what I'm passionate about. But I also wanted to work with people. I love helping people. Oh, it feeds my soul. So I get to do all of that now.
People ask me, what
Keep your mind open.
when am I going to retire and stuff? And I say,
Yeah, that was my next thing I was going to say because when I Googled you to see if there was anything about you I did not know after knowing each other these years, when I hit Johnny Rowlands, it says Johnny Rowlands' age.
Yeah, the autocomplete in Google.
Yes. And I thought that was so hilarious.
I know that must be searched a lot, and I don't know why.
It is. And I thought that it's funny because he's been like such an icon here for so long, but you look the same, and that's not fair.
Well, I do like to stay in shape.
You look
So,
great.
but when people ask me,
you really do look the same. You don't. That's why people are wanting to know how old you are because you don't look any older than you did back in the 70s and the 80s.
I don't know if that's
Dang
saying
it.
a lot. You know,
As a woman,
I didn't look that good back then.
as a
So
woman, I say that as a compliment and I say that to him too.
I
We're
appreciate
15
that.
years apart, and no people think I'm older than him. It's like
yeah,
that's not.
a 1-year-old will do that to you though. My little 1-year-old girl is
She's
like,
so pretty.
oh my gosh, it's just like
She,
the coolest thing I've ever done.
She's gorgeous.
And I people ask me, you know, how I felt about it. I said, I knew it was going to be cool, but this is 10 times cooler than I ever thought. And I thought it would be amazingly cool.
Changes your life.
Yeah, it does. I mean, it's cool. And
Well, see,
but
good things come to those who wait. And this, you were supposed to marry her. You were supposed to have her.
oh yeah.
When you were supposed to do that, and you were supposed to do everything else before that.
Have you ever thought about how many things in your life have happened that if it had gone one way rather than the other, where you would be?
Synchronicity. Yep.
I mean,
We think about synchronicity all the time.
I missed what I thought was going to be my dream opportunity to program a radio station in the infancy of my radio career in Hays, Kansas, for this station I was working for in Topeka. And I told him, I don't know if I want to do that. And I changed my mind and I went back and I said, I'll do it. And they said, well, that was last week. You know, we already filled the position. Where would I be if that
I know,
had happened?
right? If you would have taken that gig.
Yeah, and I do this a lot with people who I've met over my life. Where would I be if I hadn't met so-and-so?
Right.
Where would I be if Gary Coleman at the bar at Baker University, when I walked in one day and I was on the radio station, campus radio station, I walked in and he goes, Rockin' with Rowlands, Johnny Rockin' Rowlands. And that was my radio name from that moment on.
Yeah.
Where would I-
Flashback.
Where would I be?
I need to have big hair right now because I'm like flashing back to the 80s.
Yeah.
Johnny Rockin' Rowlands.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's what they call luck. And it opportunity meets preparation.
Yeah.
That's
yeah.
what it is.
Yeah.
You know?
The
And so there's a lot of that, a lot of synchronicity, and it's just, and whatever path you choose, that's supposed to lead you there.
and I tell people I'm just getting started.
and
Absolutely.
I am
You know?
so with you. High five again.
Yeah. All right, baby.
Boom, buddy. Well, Johnny, I want to thank you so much, and will you come back and see us again?
I would love to. This is, you know.
I have had a blast. We have a lot more to talk about.
I know.
It's been fun.
It's just,
I didn't even get through half my questions,
It's-
and we've been on, I think, for over 2 hours.
Oh, yeah.
Have we really?
Yeah.
Oh my god!
I know. It just
I have any
flies by,
idea.
doesn't it?
Yeah, it's just being able.
I mean,
to
we could talk all night.
experience the miracle of the atmosphere. I mean, when you,
Oh,
I just
isn't
can't.
it?
I can't ever
The
get over that.
smell, the sight, all of it.
And
The
when you
feel.
think, and I did this, and I hope I have this right. If you were to take a basketball and take a sheet of typing paper or whatever, if you could mold that directly on a basketball, it's thicker than the atmosphere on the Earth.
Yeah,
By measurement.
that's a good comparison.
If you think
the
it's-
atmosphere
That's
is
a
really
physics
a
thing I
very
didn't know.
very thin.
8,000 mile diameter to
Oh, you're getting deep on me, Johnny.
And half of the atmosphere is in the first 18,000 feet,
Yes, definitely.
and 18,000 feet is
Like
6 miles.
miles, that's
no,
it.
that's not right. Is that right?
Yeah, well,
no,
let's say-
3 or 4
I thought it
miles.
was
It's
like-
about 3 or 4 miles.
3 or 4 miles.
That's right.
Out of 8,000 diameter of the Earth. So it's this paper thin thing, and
Right.
all this stuff that so when we see it, stuff go up 30,000 feet, and we think, wow, that's really up there. It's like,
No, it
man,
isn't.
Nah, it's
by
not that
comparison.
If you take it and put it sideways, it's like going down,
And we're moving 1,000 miles an hour right now, which is pretty
Yes.
cool.
Oh, God, you're blowing my mind, man.
I got a lot of stuff. Like
Trippy stuff from
you-
Johnny Rockin' Rowlands.
you want to hear the most disturbing one I saw, and
Yeah.
then I'll shut up.
No, go ahead.
Went to the Bahamas, and they have one of those T-shirt stores where when you go outside, the UV hits the black and white decorations on it, and they turn color. And
cool.
so it was called the Sol store or something like that. And they said fun facts about the sun, and they had all this stuff. And one of them was there are more stars equivalent to our sun in the universe than there are grains of sand on every beach in the world.
Holy crap.
Now that's a mind blower there.
Yeah.
More stars
Mind
equivalent to our sun.
blown.
That can't be.
And plus,
you know?
did you see the new planets they
And
just
who
found?
counted? What?
The new planets they found around the Milky Way? I just read about it
really?
yesterday. Bunch of new planets right outside the Milky Way. They found a new thing to zoom in, and they found a bunch of dead stars too. But that blows my mind. I mean, there's got to be more. There's
Yeah.
got to be.
That makes
What is
sense.
it George Carlin used to say? If it's just us, what a flipping waste of space that would be.
On that note, there we go. Perfect.
Well, hey, again, Johnny. Okay, yeah, we're going to come back and we're going to get all conspiracy theory all up.
We're
in here.
honored that you came. So thank
Well,
And
right
not
back
really
at
conspiracy. We're going to go all scientific.
Perfect.
I'm going to pull up a bunch of Neil deGrasse and Bill Nye
Oh,
and
wow.
all kinds of fun stuff.
you. Man,
And then some more helicopter stories.
ready.
Yay. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Hey, tell Busby he's next.
Hey, I'm sure he will love
Because
it.
I'm
and-
going to bug the crap out of him here
Yeah,
soon.
and you'll laugh a lot.
Oh, I know.
Yes,
Yeah.
Thanks so much, you guys. I really
Oh,
appreciate
thank
it.
you
Thanks,
guys
Johnny.
so
Johnny.
much. And you be safe up there in the air, and we'll always be watching you.
I'm always
And
safe.
anything you need from us, you just let us know, man.
Oh, you're going to hear from me.
Okie dokie.
Good.
Well,
All right.
thanks again, and thanks,
everyone for tuning
boys.
in.
And
WhatTheWeatherPodcast.com.
yep, bring us out, Skivers.
Yeah. Facebook, social media, Instagram, Twitter. We're out there. Look us up.
Yes,
Thanks for tuning in.
toodles.
Have a good day.
Yeah, keep an eye on the sky. You're
Do we go 2 hours?